bigger threat. It's already the main daily digital habit for millions of people around the world. Investing in its global creator community, growing ad revenue, and easy anytime access to content is keeping eyes on YouTube and away from traditional TV. This edition of The Inquiry was presented by me, Charmaine Cozier. The producer was Jill Collins, researcher Kirstine Knight, editor Tara McDermott, and technical producer Cameron Ward.
That was The Inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio. You're on CBC live from downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. We are going to say good morning to the team, and then we're going right to headlines to talk about this weather mess we've got in our hands. Good morning to Kevin Nipatebo. Kevin is our YouTube producer. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who is our technical producer, and we'll be covering the forecasts on air. And good morning to Corey Funk, who's here directing the show, and we'll cover the commute. Speaking of which, we have things that are closed, big things. Let's go to Heather Wells, who's here with our headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes. It doesn't look so bad inside the city of Winnipeg. What we have is basically wet. But as you head west, that's where the problems begin. And so we have another morning of winter storm warnings and snowy, wet conditions creating hazardous driving. This morning, a long list of highways in western Manitoba are closed, including major routes like the Trans-Canada, closed from Sydney all the way to the Saskatchewan border. As well, routes like Highway 10 and Highway 5, sections of those well-traveled highways are also closed today. Brandon School Division say the buses will not be running outside the city of Brandon today. And in Southwest Horizon School Division, buses and classes are canceled. So we'll hear the latest on all of that coming up. As well, some students and staff at the University of Manitoba are feeling confused and frustrated after that big security concern yesterday about a man armed with a knife on campus. Some question why it took the university so long to notify students and staff. We'll hear that story as well in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, we all knew this was coming. And as Heather said, not so bad here in the city of Winnipeg, although it's the first time I think that we've really seen the white stuff on the ground. It's just a light layer right now, and it's likely going to melt off. But our high today is going to be 2 degrees, in case you're curious about the temperature here in Winnipeg. Well, today on the program, it is a space for the queer community to come together. We're going to talk with the co-founder of Matter Manitoba as the nonprofit prepares to open its doors for the first time on something new. So they'll be in studio with us to share what's happening. That's right after 6. Also, as a measles outbreak in New Brunswick continues to spread, we're going to hear from an immunologist about the symptoms to look out for. And I don't know about you, but if you're of a certain age, you might not realize that you may need to be revaccinated for measles and get a new shot. So stay tuned for all of that.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
For a shy guy from Fort Worth, Texas, Leon Bridges has sure been getting a lot of attention over the past few years. The Grammy-winning musician will tell you about his most personal album yet, collaborating with John Mayer and singing Ray Charles for the Obamas. I could cry, could cry, could cry. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Parts of British Columbia are beginning to clean up this morning. A bomb cyclone hit the province late yesterday. More than 100,000 homes and businesses are still without power. The storm brought hurricane-force winds to the south coast. It forced the closure of several roads as well as Stanley Park. The CBC's Mira Baines has more.
Strong winds brought a tree crashing down into power lines in North Vancouver. Park rangers led people out of Stanley Park around 8 o'clock last night as trees scattered across the roadways. BC Hydro said that winds caused extensive damage to their systems and widespread power outages. Spokesperson Ted Olenek.
With a storm like this, we've seen a lot of trees come down on lines and bring lines down. We remind our customers, please stay 10 meters back from a down line. Never assume the line is de-energized because it's on the ground.
The windstorm has been posing challenges to start restoration work, according to BC Hydro. Some communities are expected to have their electricity out for several hours.
What I see, unfortunately,
is a lot of candles in the Krogh household as opposed to lights on.
Nanaimo Mayor Leonard Krogh says emergency crews are working hard to help.
Whether it be people who are trying to get their dinners ready or attend to family events or whatever, the fact is the power outage has had a real impact.
BC's Transportation Ministry is warning drivers on Vancouver Island to avoid travel overnight into this morning. The ministry says downed power lines, debris, and fallen trees have resulted in multiple highway closures on the island. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
At least one death in the United States is being blamed on this bomb cyclone. It also hit the Pacific Northwest yesterday. One woman was killed when a tree fell on her in a homeless encampment in Washington state. High winds, heavy rain, and blizzard-like conditions are affecting some parts of Seattle. This morning, more than 500,000 customers there remain without power. In Northern California, several areas are under wind and flood warnings. Police in the Toronto area say a worrying trend could be making the city's gun problem even worse. Officers are starting to seize devices used to make handguns fire more rapidly. The CBC's Thomas Daigle has the details.
Listen to the difference between a typical semi-automatic handgun and one illegally equipped with a Glock switch. The small device, the size of a quarter, transforms the weapon into a fully automatic machine gun. And Glock switches are turning up on the street.
These guns can fire 900, 1,200 rounds a minute.
Matthew Passmore is a senior firearm officer with Toronto Police. He says after a downtown shootout last week that saw suspects fire nearly 100 rounds, officers seized multiple handguns outfitted with those Glock switches.
We are seeing these items installed by a variety of individuals with a variety of different backgrounds and experience levels.
In nearby Peel region, Police Chief Nishan Duriappa recently announced they'd seized more than 4 dozen of those devices.
The amount of rounds being discharged is also increased per incident.
Also known as auto sears, they appear all too easy to buy. CBC News found a website offering to sell and ship them to Canada. Criminologist Michael Arntfield sees it as part of a worrying trend.
There's an increasingly evolving and unpredictable criminal landscape in Canada now for which there's no real precedent.
He says it's the latest evidence that federal firearm legislation is hardly curbing the use of illegal weapons on the street. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
Convicted serial killer Paul Bernardo has a parole hearing scheduled for next week, but the parole board will not allow the families of his victims to attend in person. It says there are safety concerns. Tim Danson is the lawyer representing the families of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey. He sent a letter to the Justice Minister and the Parole Board of Canada arguing his clients have a right to be there.
Who is the person that is creating this safety security concern? Surely it's not the families. They've attended 2 previous parole hearings and they have acted with great grace and propriety at both hearings. So if it's Paul Bernardo himself who's the problem, then what on earth is he doing in medium security? They should be sent back to maximum security.
Bernardo is serving a life sentence for the kidnapping, sexual assault, and murders of the girls in 1992. He has been designated a dangerous offender. Last year, he was transferred to a medium security facility. Former Hong Kong publisher Jimmy Lai is testifying in his own defense in a national security trial. The pro-democracy media mogul is accused of trying to collude with foreign forces during anti-government protests in 2019. Lai is also accused of publishing seditious material. In a rare move, Lai has been allowed to testify publicly. Outside the courthouse, protesters talk about their support for Lai.
He's rich, but he still give up his privilege to be an outspoken man for justice, freedom, and democracy. So I think he has the spirit to represent the old Hong Kong spirit.
Lai is accused of trying to get U.S. officials, including former Vice President Mike Pence, to intervene in the protests in Hong Kong. Lai has denied the charges. A CBC News investigation has some people wanting a public inquiry into a case of sexual exploitation. 2 men in St. John's are accused of abusing 13 boys over a span of more than 2 decades at a trailer park. Now a lawyer for some of the alleged victims says they're planning to sue the province and its police service. As Ryan Cook reports, the lawyer says the police missed multiple opportunities to catch one of the suspects.
There's just still so much that we don't know.
Lawyer Stephen Barnes represents 6 men who say they were sexually abused by Tony Humby as teens. He says they all want to know how Humby went without charges for years, despite multiple interactions with police.
When you look at the facts of this and the questions that remain, I think a public inquiry is justified.
One of Barnes's clients went to police in 2007 when he was 16 and said Humby had raped him. According to search warrant documents obtained by CBC Investigates, police interviewed Humby and told him no charges would be laid. Those documents, which are untested in court, allege Humby was part of at least 9 police investigations before being arrested last year. He's now accused of sexually assaulting 11 youths over an 18-year span. Many of the alleged victims were wards of the province's child protection system.
Here we go again.
Lynn Moore has extensive experience in these kinds of cases. She too believes a public inquiry is needed, but into why little has improved in Newfoundland and Labrador's child protection system, despite decades of reports and recommendations, dating all the way back to the Mount Cashel orphanage scandal.
It's a system that's supposed to protect children, but it's just not.
The Premier has now ordered a review of the system by the province's child and youth advocate. As for Humby, he's pleaded not guilty and is set for trial on 72 charges in March. Ryan Cook, CBC News, St. John's.
New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt says her government will launch an investigation into a mysterious brain illness. There have been reports of an unknown neurological syndrome dating back to 2021, and health officials warned dozens of people were affected. As Bobby Jean McKinnon tells us, some New Brunswickers are demanding more investigation.
We're hopeful that she is going to follow through on this.
Stacey Quigley-Cormier's 23-year-old stepdaughter Gabrielle is one of the youngest patients with neurodegenerative symptoms. She says the hope is from newly elected Premier Susan Holt and her confirmation from Ottawa that its promise of $5 million to help study the mystery brain illness is still on the table, along with the support of the Public Health Agency of Canada.
And we want to leverage the expertise and the resources of the Public Health Agency of Canada to help us. And I think together we can build a robust, aggressive plan that is open and transparent.
In early 2021, the Blaine Higgs government launched an investigation involving federal experts into a cluster of 48 patients. Their symptoms ranged from painful muscle spasms to memory loss and behavioral changes. But then the province created its own oversight committee and concluded there was no mystery syndrome. Moncton-based neurologist Dr. Elie Marrero is standing by his theory of a new illness. He says some patients' blood work showed elevated levels of heavy metals found in herbicides like glyphosate and wants to see testing to rule out environmental toxins. Marrero says he has now notified public health of 366 patients from New Brunswick and 6 other provinces, including Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland, Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta. He says 42 people have died.
So that is certainly growing in an unprecedented manner beyond what we could predict.
Holt, meanwhile, says patients and their families deserve answers. She says people can expect to see progress as early as January. Bobby Jean McKinnon, CBC News, St. John.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, the weather is active this morning, which is to say that it's going to be supremely troublesome. We've got school closures. We've got highway closures. Welcome to the start of the winter season, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio. You're live on CBC. We do have light, wet snow in Winnipeg falling, and it's 1 degree. Thank you, Heather Wells. Heather handing me a new list of school closures, and we'll get to what those are in just a moment here on the air. This hour, in addition to talking about the weather today, we are going to be plugging you into something new, a new space for the queer community to come together. We're going to talk to the co-founder of Matter Manitoba as the nonprofit prepares to open its doors for the very first time, so stay tuned for that live conversation. Also this hour, have you gone for a shot, maybe a flu shot, and they've said to you, have you considered your measles vaccination? Are you updated? If you're a certain age, you might want to be thinking about it because measles in New Brunswick continues to spread. We're going to hear from an immunologist about the symptoms to look out for, and also educate ourselves about the choices we have when it comes to vaccines and what age groups might want to think about that. And on our medical column today, Dr. Bardwaj is actually going to be looking at diabetes. Now there are more than 800 million people worldwide living with diabetes. There's a new report out. This is research published last week, but we're going to get into the details with Dr. Raj Bardwaj about what the very most current concerns are about diabetes in 2024. Right now, let's go to other developing news. Heather Wells, as I mentioned, is here live, and she's back in the news center now with her headlines. Hi.
Hi there. Good morning. Well, healthcare workers say getting more hospital beds operational in Manitoba can't come soon enough. As part of yesterday's throne speech, the NDP government committed to 102 staffed healthcare beds. It doesn't say where those beds will be. We're going to hear some reaction to that. As well, people in the northern Manitoba Cree Nation will soon need a permit to bring alcohol into the community. The measure is part of a set of stricter restrictions coming under a state of emergency order in Nisitchewayasik Cree Nation, all aimed at curbing a spike in violence. So we'll hear about that as well in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, let's get into the first school closures of the year. As Heather mentioned earlier, Brandon School Division buses are not operating outside the city today. Alexander O'Kelly and Spring Valley schools are closed, and buses will run within the city of Brandon, though. Attendance, though, is always at parental discretion in these cases, so please call the school if you're not able to attend. Southwest Horizon School Division, also buses and classes are canceled, so in this case, classes as well. Staff are going to be working from home, and buses are canceled in the Mountain View School Division as well. The Park West School Division's just reached out to CBC and saying schools are closed there as well. So that's the list to this hour. We always encourage you to go to our social streams and our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, where you can see the list. Now, this is all because of the weather, and Abby's here with the forecast. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, you're correct. Lots of areas across the province this morning are facing this winter condition. We have that winter storm warning in effect, which is covering Brandon, Dauphin, surrounding areas. We're going to be seeing heavy snow, strong winds, gusting all the way to 70 kilometers. Visibility is going to be poor, so you should expect that we will see accumulations. It could range from 15 to 30 centimeters today, with the worst conditions bringing that in the western parts of the province. Now, this snow will be tapering off later in the evening. However, roads are going to be icy, so it's going to be very difficult for navigation. If we're looking at conditions in the northern part of the province, Thompson, up to 25 centimeters of snow expected, and conditions should improve also later this evening. As for Winnipeg, we are also under this special weather statement, with snow continuing through the day after, the wet 24 hours we've seen, with up to 15 centimeters of snow possible by this evening. And if we head over to the Red River Valley, which includes Gimli, Steinbach, and Morris area, we're gonna be seeing rain transitioning to snow later in the day. 15 centimeters expected when we get to this evening. So this winter storm warning continues for most of southwestern Manitoba, where blowing snow is causing visibility issues. But right now, Winnipeg 1, we're seeing light snow outside. Expect a messy start to the day, as this rain will be turning to snow, and we're expecting about 15 centimeters possibly by the evening.
And I think that 15, actually, because it's a complicated system, is they're saying near Lake Winnipeg, just so everyone knows, and 10 to 15 in the really western region. For Winnipeg specifically, I think our snowfall could be between 0 and 5 centimeters.
0 and 5 centimeters.
So we'll luck out a little more. We always do in the city. Goes without saying, maybe, but so we'll see. It doesn't help the whole province, though, does it? It's that messy transition day. It also has meant that highways are closed in parts of Manitoba, including part of Highway 1. Corey Funk?
Yeah, Highway 1 from Austin running all the way west through Brandon to the Saskatchewan border, closed right now. Also, the highways around Dauphin. Pretty much if you're in Dauphin, every single highway around you right now is closed. That includes Highway 5 from Dauphin to Oka River, from Highway 5 from Dauphin to Grandview, even Highway 10 through Riding Mountain. You want to check out Manitoba 511 before you hit the road, but pretty much if you're in Dauphin, all the highways around you right now, you can assume, are closed as well. Similar case for Russell as well. Highway 45 also closed right now to the Saskatchewan border, and also running east as well to Rossburn, as well as highways 83 from Russell to Roblin as well, closed right now. I'm going to be keeping an eye on those throughout the morning. If you have any updates on those conditions, you can assume every other highway in Western Manitoba this morning is also covered with poor visibility as well. So be very, very cautious if you need to hit the highways, or just avoid it altogether if you can, because it is very, very poor conditions out there, particularly in Western Manitoba, right across the board. And here in Winnipeg, we did get a call from RuPaul. Inkster and McPhillips, the lights are flashing red right now. So may cause some backups for folks this morning here in the city. But otherwise, roads are open, fairly clear right now. But if you see anything else going on, give me a call on the CBC Commuter line, 204-788-3093.
.16 is the time right now, and as I mentioned, let's start with some great news. Members of Winnipeg's 2S LGBTQIA+ community are soon going to have a new space to gather. Matter Manitoba is going to open on Graham Avenue in just a few weeks. The space is going to feature a gallery and a library and special programming. So on December 7th, the nonprofit's going to hold an open house and a queer mini market. And Carla Taylor is up early and with us to talk about it, co-founder of Matter Manitoba. Hi there.
Good morning.
So how excited are you about this opening?
We're thrilled. The co-founders and I are so excited to finally open the space and to bring in the community members together.
What's the need for it, and what's the importance of where you've put it in downtown Winnipeg?
Well, particularly for the BIPOC aspect of our community, there really are no dedicated spaces. And so we felt it was really important to center some further marginalized voices in our community and to give opportunities for folks to maybe put on an art exhibit or to feature some of their writing in ways that they may not get opportunities to in mainstream arts and literature circles.
So is when people think about what will be accessible through the space, tell me a little bit about when people walk in, what they should expect to experience.
Right. So for this opening day on our main floor, we'll have a community engagement table where folks can give ideas of the kinds of programming they'd like to see within our space, because this is by community for community programming. We're going to be having a couple of our vendors on the main floor, and we're going to have a table with a selection of items from all of the vendors, including those on the lower level in case folks have some difficulty with stairs. And then we're going to just have opportunities for people to meet and mingle and to chat with us about future programming.
What kinds of, when you're saying vendors or artists, can you give me some examples of some things?
Sure. We have 15 vendors coming in for the day, 10 of which are BIPOC, which is great. We have some folks that are making beading, some people that have crocheted or knitted, some photographers, folks providing food, really any kind of creative thing that you can think of. Our community members are really talented, so we're really excited for people to get to see a selection of items there.
When you were thinking about, as you said, this is a community space, so it's, the input's going to continue to come, it'll change. Why was it important for you to include a library to begin with?
This idea actually started years ago with my friend Renu Shonik to center books created by members of the 2SQT BIPOC community. When Renu went to our Millennium Library, they could only find one book written by an author sharing both intersections. And so recognize that a lot of these items are actually accessible only through, say, institutions like universities. Not everybody can access that. So A, providing access to folks that might not get it otherwise, and B, just centering really talented authors that tend to get underrepresented in our community was pivotal for both of us.
This, as I understand, as you said and alluded to this, it will be volunteer run, the space.
Yes.
And it will depend on support from the community. What kinds of things might you want the community to know about what you might need in terms of that support to keep this initiative going?
Yeah, well, we are open to any and all inquiries about ideas for workshops. We've actually been approached by members of the community already for offering workshops in things like hand drum making, creative writing, leadership development for youth, intergenerational knowledge circles, and dance classes. So we already have interest, we already have connections, but folks are really welcome to come out, speak to us, message us on social media, email us through our website, and just just chat with us. Let us know what you're interested in providing, attending, seeing in our space.
What's the website, Carla? Just so I can maybe make sure we pass along here.
mattermanitoba.org.
Mattermanitoba.org. Is it an MB or the full word Manitoba?
Full word.
Full word Manitoba.org. You said at the very beginning that this is sort of a space that you haven't had, the community hasn't had. What has that meant for how people have been trying to find connection? Where has that been happening? Or
I mean, historically in the community, a lot of it has been through bar spaces. We do have Rainbow Resource Center. They've kind of shifted focus to larger community projects like getting housing and larger initiatives. So the sort of grassroots, smaller, one-on-one spaces haven't really existed outside of a bar circle. In my experience over the years, there weren't really, queer spaces, even in universities when I was going to school. That dates me a little bit, but
I'm dated too, don't you worry.
So it's just a nice opportunity.
That's what we say.
Yeah, to have especially intergenerational spaces where people of different age brackets and experiences can come together. I don't know of anything that's existed like that, so we're really excited to create something different.
Well, speaking to that though, I mean, I know that I'm joking around about our age or my presumed age. I don't know your age, but like I think to myself, like you do reach a certain point, you look around at your community and you go, we need this for all kinds of reasons. I'm going to I want to be part of this change. And also part of that, I'm wondering how that, you said if the traditional way has been sort of, for lack of other spaces, been gathering in bars and such, what might this new space mean to families?
Yeah, we're actually really excited for members to be able to bring their children with them. We have some collaborations in the work with local high schools and universities to try to bring youth into the circles, to have opportunities to connect with members of the community they may not be able to access, or to even just see people like themselves outside of Pride. Pride's wonderful, but it's one day. And so creating opportunities every day of the year is really important.
Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Congrats on your new space. So the mini market is the big thing that we want people to think about. So that is coming up fast. Carla Taylor's been in talking to us about it, co-founder of Matter Manitoba. So their open house and their mini queer market is happening December 7th. That is, you think it's, November, it's a ways away. It's not. It's just a couple weeks. December 7th, this is 433 Graham Avenue. Admission is by donation. And once again, just to repeat the website for more details, if you want to engage, mattermanitoba.org.
It began with a lamb selling crinkle-proof ties. Then a stickman named Ready Kilowatt added a jolt. But marketing really got wild when a striped fella named Tony showed up at breakfast.
Good, they're great!
Put a tiger in your tank. Advertising gets animated on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
6:23 a.m. is the time right now on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app and YouTube. During our interview, Heather Wells brought in us some more school division closures. So we have a day in weather that's going to be really challenging. You can even see if you're on YouTube that our camera lens is just obscured by kind of a rainy, snowy mix. That's what we've got in Winnipeg. But to the west, major issues. The Highway 1, for example, is closed from around Austin all the way to the Saskatchewan border to the west. And then we also have lots of problems around Roblin Russell with closures as well of highways. Just check 511 if you're heading out and see what's going on. We are also expecting this snow to continue as these systems continue through western Manitoba, northern Manitoba, and it's wet here in Winnipeg. So school closures, that's what you're waiting for. We have now cancellation of transportation for Gilbert, Rosset, and St. Claude. The Franco-Manitoban School Division has also closed some schools today. St. Lazare, Laurier, La Source, as well as Our Lady of Lourdes, all closed. Prairie Spirit says schools are closed and no buses are running. Rolling River has closed all schools today. Fort LaBosse School Division is closed. Buses aren't running. Park West School Division is closed. Buses are canceled in Mountain View School Division. Southwest Horizon Division, buses and classes canceled. Staff to work from home. Brandon's not operating buses outside the city. Alexander, O'Kelly, and Spring Valley are closed. And then if you are having trouble with getting to school anywhere in that division, you're asked to call because it's at your discretion given what's going on. It is our first really snowy and wintry morning of the season. And I say that knowing that northern Manitoba's had a lot of snow already, but certainly here in the south and province-wide, it's It's a really active day. Next on the program, let's talk about measles. An outbreak in New Brunswick has now spread to 44 people, and it's set to push Canada's annual case count for the disease to its highest number in 5 years. To talk about measles, Dawn Bodish is with us. She's an immunologist and professor of medicine at McMaster University. Good morning.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. So remind us what measles is and how it shows up.
It's a respiratory virus that's extremely contagious. So you get it by breathing, and then once it infects your lungs, you'll get this high fever, and there's a characteristic rash that appears a few days afterwards. But measles is unusual because instead of just infecting the cells that line our lungs, it actually infects and kills our immune cells. So what can happen with measles is you can have this acute infection, which can be serious enough to put 1 in 200 kids into a hospital. But then as your immune cells are dying, you're now vulnerable to other infections. So bacterial infections can happen for weeks to months to even years after the initial measles infection. And that's one of the reasons it's so dangerous and so important to get vaccinated.
How is it spread?
It's a respiratory virus, so you get it through breathing the air. But unlike most respiratory viruses, it is so incredibly contagious, and it can stay in the air for such a long period of time that you could walk into a room where someone who had measles left 3 hours earlier and still get infected. And that highly contagious nature means that these outbreaks tend to spread very quickly, and it also means they can be hard to trace and hard to stop.
For a lot of us, it's been decades since we've been, face-to-face with measles. Can you remind us what the risks and dangers are? You've already alluded to some of those very, very, very long-term effects that can present.
So you can have the acute infection, which is dangerous in and of itself. Like I said, 1 in 200 kids might end up in hospital. You have the increased risk of bacterial infections, and those are often what end up killing people. And we know that people who've had measles tend to need to go back to the doctor and get more antibiotics in years that follow. But then there are also some rare and extremely serious complications from measles. There are issues with the brain and neurological issues. Sometimes they show up at the initial infections, and sometimes they take years to manifest. And for these reasons altogether, the measles vaccine has saved more lives than all our other childhood vaccines. It's incredibly important to avoid measles because of both these short-term and long-term side effects.
This outbreak in New Brunswick started with one single infected traveler. How do infections, or how quickly do infections like measles take a foothold?
Well, historically, what's happened is travelers have brought them back to Canada because we had such high vaccination rates here that we didn't really have outbreaks, but parts of the world where there is no measles vaccination due to war, civil unrest, political ill will, whatever, would be places where measles would circulate. And so what's happening now and becoming more common is many parts of the world are having their childhood vaccine campaigns break down. And so parts of the world that we haven't historically associated with travel and getting measles, like the UK, can now become a bit of a higher risk. Those infections come back, and again, historically, because we had high vaccination rates, outbreaks were low and it was fairly easy to trace. But now we've reached a stage where we don't have the 95% of children vaccinated, which we require. So the outbreaks are bigger. They tend to spread through places where kids congregate, so daycare and school and that sort of thing. Although certainly adults who haven't been vaccinated can also get measles for the first time.
So can you also, just before you go this morning, talk more about adults? Because even if you were vaccinated as a child, if you're of a certain age, I know that there are doctors now, because frankly, one of the pharmacists said this to me. They were like, oh, you're 50, you were born in 74. Have you considered a measles vaccine? And they were educating me about the different age groups. So, yeah.
There was a brief period where there were some policy changes in who got vaccinated for measles and how they got vaccinated for measles. And so there's a brief period where some provinces do recommend a catch-up vaccine. And so what this means is you should get a vaccine to sort of top that up. Now, the good news is if you are unsure if you got vaccinated, if you are unclear, you don't have your vaccine records, there is no harm in getting an updated measles vaccine. Definitely ask your family doctor, your pharmacist, whomever, because you want to be protected. You don't want any of those ill effects to happen to you. And there are these particular birth cohorts that didn't get the optimal measles vaccine and could use a top-up.
All right, Dawn, thank you very much for this.
My absolute pleasure. Anytime.
That is Dawn Bowdish, an immunologist and professor of medicine at McMaster University. We will go into a full and growing list of school closures and tell you more about some highways that are closed as well, in addition to what we're about to hear on your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, we are waking up to wet, rainy streets in Winnipeg. But if you are out in western Manitoba, it is snow and it is impacting highway conditions. I will tell you that in Winnipeg, this rain is going to mix with snow and then turn to snow this afternoon. Today's high is 2. Well, it is another morning of special weather statements and winter storm warnings. And the snow in western Manitoba creating hazardous driving. This morning, a long list of highways in western Manitoba are closed, including some well-driven roads, Highway 10, portions of Highway 5, and then the Trans-Canada Highway from Sydney, that is west of Port Prairie, all the way to the Saskatchewan border. The Trans-Canada is closed this morning because of winter hazardous driving conditions. That, of course, is affecting schools and school buses. Marcy will have all that information for you coming up after the news. Healthcare workers say getting more hospital beds operational in Manitoba can't come soon enough. As part of yesterday's throne speech, the government committed to 102 staffed healthcare beds. It doesn't say where those beds will be. Dr. Nichelle Desolette is president-elect of Doctors Manitoba. She says the government needs to understand the urgency.
And allusions to increasing bed capacity in the hospitals. That's really encouraging, but we need to stop talking about it and we need to do it now.
Desolette says the shortage of staff for hospital beds is backing up emergency rooms across the province. The NDP says it has a new strategy to reduce ER times as well. Well, some students and staff at the University of Manitoba are feeling confused and frustrated after a security concern about a man armed with a knife on campus. Some question why it took the university so long to notify students and staff yesterday. Professor Eric Thompson is the U of M Faculty Association president. He says safety policies and procedures need to be reviewed again.
Taking the occasion to examine and make sure that the procedures are in place so that next time this happens, it happens flawlessly. And, emergencies are always sad, but that it happens with the minimum disruption.
Thompson says the Faculty Association and University Administration will discuss security policies later this week. A Northern Manitoba First Nation is tightening restrictions around gang activity, access to alcohol, and who can even get into the community. Nisitchewayasik Cree Nation has been under a state of emergency since last year, but Chief Angela Levasseur says stricter measures are needed to reduce violence.
We are hoping that with our new state of emergency that we're going to see a reduction in bootlegging, a reduction in the illegal drug trade, and that we're going to see a major reduction in the amount of community violence.
A permit will be required to bring alcohol into the community, while access to NCN will be restricted to people who live there and authorized visitors. The new measures take effect December 2nd. A report by the Special Parliamentary Committee on the Canada People's Republic of China relationship has made 12 recommendations, all focused on tightening security at Canadian research institutions and government departments. This report was prompted by a high-profile security breach at Canada's National Microbiology Lab in Winnipeg. Karen Pauls has the latest.
The committee wants Canada to limit the transfer of highly dangerous viruses and pathogens like Ebola and Hennepin to labs in trusted countries, not China. That's what happened, and part of the reason Jiango Chu and her husband Keating Chung were escorted out of Winnipeg's National Microbiology Lab in 2019. They were fired 2 years later. A security assessment found Chu intentionally shared scientific knowledge and materials with China. The committee also recommends Canada end all government-funded research in sensitive areas with China, and that it find ways to prevent people under investigation for national security breaches from leaving the country. Christian Leuprecht is an expert in security and defense.
The insider threat, having people there who understand what you're doing, what's of high value, is
perhaps even a greater threat than sort of having your data exfiltrated, because these are people who've effectively betrayed your trust.
Chu and Chung have never been reached for comment. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, what a show for a sold-out crowd.
Jets on the puck again.
A hat trick for Mark Scheifele in the third period on TSN as the Jets pounded the Panthers 6-3, Scheifele scoring in each period. Kyle Connor with a single, Morgan Barron had 2, Connor Hellebuck with 20 saves. Coach Scott Arniel says after last week's loss in Florida, his team knew they had to make changes.
Biggest thing, we got to go back at them. We knew how much better we had to be. We're going out on the road for 11 days. We didn't want to have to go out with a three-game losing streak. So there's a lot of things kind of piled into this game.
As you heard Arniel there, 11 days and 6 games in this road trip, starting in Pittsburgh on Friday. You can read more about that big win last night, as well as other national, international news. Stay in step with the road conditions and school closures. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Here's the list of school closures, a.k.a. the stay in your pajamas, kids. Here's what's closed completely. Let's start with that. So Park West School Division schools are closed. Fort LaBosse, Rolling River, Prairie Spirit, and all schools in Region A of Prairie Rose, all closed. In the Franco-Manitoban School Division, St. Lazare, Plain Days School, Laurier, and in Shiloh, La Source School and Our Lady of Lourdes School as well, all closed. So that's the full closures list. In addition to that, Brandon School Division has closed Alexander O'Kelly and Spring Valley schools. The other issues are with transportation. So there's bus transportation that's been canceled in Gilbert Rossé and St. Claude. Also, buses are canceled in Mountain View School Division, Southwest Horizon School Division. Buses and classes are canceled. Staff are assigned to work from home, though. And also in Brandon School Division, I'll just note that there's no buses outside of the city of Brandon today. And if you need to travel and it's not possible for you feel, it's at parental discretion everywhere. And please contact the school if you cannot make it. All of this is because of what Abby's about to tell us. Hello, sir.
How you doing again? We're facing that winter storm condition across board, and that's an effect from north all the way down south. We're going to see snowfall accumulation ranging from 15 to 30 centimeters across most of the regions once the system goes through. Right now, Winnipeg, it is light snow we're seeing out there. We're at 1 degree, though it's a messy stat as mentioned earlier. This rain is going to be changing to snow later, and for the Winnipeg area we should be seeing between 0 and 5 centimeters possibly by the evening period, though the condition will improve as we get towards the end of the day, though that's snow will continue until midnight. Brandon is sitting at -5 with light snow, which is also blowing at this time, and as mentioned we have that winter storm warning in effect, which will continue throughout the day. Expect about 2 to 4 centimeters accumulation. And for Brandon, you're just going to stay around that high of -5 for the rest of the day with some breezy conditions easing in the afternoon. Moving up to Thompson, -1 and light snow. You're seeing snowfall warning in effect for the region, also up to about 25 centimeters of snow expected by the evening period. The high for today will stay at 0 with more snow coming, and then the winds will be easing off. Further north in Churchill, it is -1. Light snow. You're seeing periods of light snow and freezing drizzle will be felt in that region. You're also noticing some fog in the area. That would stay with you throughout the day, and temperatures will stay steady near -1. Dauphin is sitting at -3. Light snow you're noticing at this time. Also, Dauphin is under that winter storm warning with about 30 centimeters expected by the end of the day. The accumulation for some areas you'd see 5, but in total you should be getting about 30. And later this afternoon the breeze will ease off, and then we'll see temperatures drop to around -9. Gimli, 2 degrees, light rain that will turn to snow later today. For the Interlake region, we're seeing snow with up to about 15 centimeters accumulation, and expect temperatures around 3 degrees with cloudy conditions, and light snow still comes later in the evening. Steinbach is at 0 with light snow. snow. We have that special statement, weather statement in effect. Rain will be changing to snow up to 15 centimeters expected, and then you get to around a high of -2 today. Morris, -2, light snow, heading for a high of you're going to see temperature stay steady near -2.
1, 2, 3, walking in a winter wonderland. Woo! Hey, I'm going to take a second here to thank my friend Heather Wells. Who's in here in studio. We got to get your mic on here.
I think it's on.
There it is on.
There you are.
I want just everyone to know this. I have never said this on air. I've worked here for 20 plus years. We do not get through these mornings without Heather Wells.
Oh, that's not true.
We don't. It is.
She's a hero.
If you now people can see how much of a hero you are because we're on YouTube. Heather runs in and out constantly all morning, updating us on closures and school closures and highway conditions.
Don't have to go to the gym today. Running around.
Honestly, between doing all your news and all of your work. Yeah. And I just wanted to express public gratefulness to you.
Oh, come on.
No, really.
Well, thank you.
Really, you're making us look good.
Oh, no, you do that on your own.
Do you know why she's in here? Because she just ran in with this. So new on this list, Park West School Division has now also closed all schools, and so has Beautiful Plains.
Yeah.
Now get back to the newsroom.
I'm sure I'm missing something now. Thank you.
It might be. The phone rings like crazy. Appreciate you. Okay, Corey, we have, speaking of highway closures, what do we know?
Yeah, right now, if you live in Brandon, Dauphin, or Russell, you can assume that all the highways immediately around you are closed. Let's start in Brandon. Highway number 1 from Austin running west all the way to the Saskatchewan border closed both ways right now, as well as Highway 10 immediately south of Brandon heading down towards Minto. Pretty much once it's Minto, that's what's closed there in Brandon, as well as Highway immediately north, Highway 16. Going up to Dauphin right now, all the highways around Dauphin are closed, you can assume. So that includes Highway 10 that takes you down through the park, and as well as Highway 5s to Ochre River, as well as to Dauphin Beach as well, Highway 20 there as well, all the way up north, heading up towards Winnipeg, Osis, and Highway 10 up to Ethelbert as well. So careful around there. That also includes Highway 5 along the east edge of the park, pretty much right from St. Rose down to the town of Riding Mountain. So heads up there. Russell as well. Highway 83 from Russell, between Russell and Roblin, completely closed as well as the highways 45 running east and west of Russell, as well as Highway 60 running south. So lots of highway closures this morning, and you can assume every other highway in Western Manitoba right now, not great conditions. Looking at some of those cameras, totally white out. Highways are white, so just be really, really careful if you're hitting the highways this morning, or avoid it altogether.
Thanks, Corey. 788-3093 if you need to reach us on the commute, and Corey will pick up the phone. It is 6:43 a.m. Let's move quickly to business news here with Crystalie Ramlakan. Good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So yesterday you spoke about the Associate Press and cuts coming there, and now we're hearing yet again about more cuts in media, this one closer to home.
Yeah, that's right. So Rogers Sports and Media says it has laid off a few dozen employees in its audio business. A spokesperson says with the radio industry continuing to feel the pressure of an uncertain advertising market, the company has made some difficult but necessary changes, which will impact roles in several markets. But the company says there will be no station closures, and it has no plans to cut programming or podcasts. But Rogers does have a large reach. Earlier this month, it said it was home to the largest ad-supported audio network in the country, with a reach of about 8 million Canadians every month.
Let's move to retail news, Crystalie. What's behind Walmart's stellar sales numbers right now?
Well, the big box store says it's been able to win market share from rivals by attracting customers who make more than $100,000 per year. So customers making 6 figures or more accounted for about 3/4 of the market share growth last quarter. So not only has the retailer been offering good deals to attract customers as budgets are squeezed by inflation and interest rates, it's also introduced premium store brand groceries, and it's beefed up its electronics and home goods sections. So Walmart is also treading on Amazon's turf by expanding its e-commerce business. It's been offering quick shipping and low delivery costs. So for more on this, here's Lisa Hutchison, who is a retail analyst and a managing partner at JC Williams.
Canadians particularly are going to spend the same or a little bit more on holiday shopping. But I think they're going to be much more frugal, and I think that's where sort of the Walmart comes into play in terms of their pricing, because they're, looking at food, they're looking at home essentials, they're looking at clothing, those sorts of things, which is, where Walmart is. I think the other thing that they've been doing really well is they've been investing a lot in terms of their website, and that's where a lot of the growth came from in the results as well.
So Walmart also predicting a strong holiday shopping season, but the retailer is also warning that tariffs promised by President-elect Donald Trump might make its products less affordable. The company says if it happens, it would have to pass on any extra costs to customers.
And there are also some changes in a different way than cuts coming to the TV business.
Yes, so there are reports that Comcast is planning to spin off most of its cable television networks, including MSNBC and CNBC, into a separate publicly traded company. The spinoff is expected to be formally announced sometime today, and the Wall Street Journal is reporting that channels such as USA, Oxygen, E, Sci-Fi, and the Golf Channel will be part of this spinoff. And Comcast plans to keep things like Bravo, the NBC broadcast network, the Peacock streaming service, and all of its other assets like NBC Sports and the Universal theme parks. Now, so the separate cable channel company will, have the same kind of structure, but it's going to have its own management team. And while some observers say that this looks like maybe they're trying to, get rid of these cable channels, it's still going to add to their bottom line. And the company executives are expected to portray the spinoff as a growth opportunity where the company may be able to get more channels or merge with another network.
How are markets looking this morning?
In Europe, markets are higher as traders assess simmering geopolitical tensions. Germany is up, the UK is up, France is up. In Asia, markets are mostly lower as China keeps lending rates steady. So right now, Japan is down, but Shanghai and Hong Kong are both up. Oil is up 48 cents to $69.87 US per barrel. Gold is down to $80 to $2,628 US per ounce. And the dollar is down almost 0.2 cents to 71.5 cents US.
Just want to mention, Crystal Lee, before you go, your story yesterday during Business News talking about Women's Entrepreneurship Day being recognized. Mm-hmm. It went crazy. So thank you for opening up that discussion, because we posted on Facebook asking people to shout out Manitoba businesses that are woman-owned. And we've got this fantastic list. There's more than 100 comments there. Oh, wow. Just for people talking about, business, what it's like to do business as a woman, and also just shouting out those that are engaged in our community and making a go of it. So thanks for opening up the discussion.
Yeah, no problem. I know from living in Winnipeg, there's so many great small businesses there. It's such a great place for entrepreneurship there.
Yeah, and you know what? We don't talk enough about it. So appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
That's Crystal Lee Ramlakan with our business news, and she will be here tomorrow once again. She's here daily with her report. I want to mention what I have up on our Facebook page this morning. This is my Marcy Marcusa page, which acts as a show page during the show. We are asking, do you need a grocery store in your local neighborhood? Or maybe I should say another one if you have one. Where and why? Like, where's your neighborhood? Why? And what's it like for you accessing groceries? The hook to this is yesterday's throne speech in this province. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew delivered his second throne speech, and in it he promised to stop grocery stores from preventing competitors from opening nearby, which means that you may have more choice. So we're asking whether or not that's something you'd be looking for and why. What's the reality of getting groceries in your area? You can write to us on Facebook. You can call us at 788-3205. We'll take calls on our listener line. Well, just looking at the camera shot of our YouTube this morning, it's just covered in snow and kind of sleety. It's a mess here in Winnipeg. The wider system of storm warnings and issues is causing problems with traffic and highway closures. And Corey's back in with an update.
Yeah, I just want to flag a couple things actually here in the city. Just got a call from Vic. Gateway and McLeod. Someone's knocked down one of the traffic lights, and it's actually blocking Gateway and McLeod at that intersection there. The lights are kind of half working, which has probably caused some confusion for folks. So Gateway and McLeod is going to be a bit chaotic this morning. About 3 cars are kind of stuck there with the traffic center down. So heads up there. As well, heard from Sarah, southbound Main Street, just before Chief Peguis, there was a 3-car collision in the far left lane. There was a fire truck on scene. May still be an issue for folks as well. The Inkster and McPhillips, the lights are flashing red. So just want to give folks a heads up there. Also a reminder, Highway 1, including a number of highways, but Highway 1 in particular from Austin to the Saskatchewan border, closed.
Abby's on the phone right now, so I'm just going to relay what people are sharing from the road. This is a different part of the province now. Let's go east. Highway 52 westbound around New Bothwell. There's plows out this morning. They're trying to keep up with the snow clearing, but there's a slow-moving lineup right now on that highway, so take it easy. And thank you so much for the call, 788-3093. That's our traffic line. And I also want to mention, please go to our website this morning and check out the list of school closures. It is long, and most of them in western Manitoba and northern Manitoba, parts of them as well. But also we have bus cancellations and transportation issues. So check that all out at cbc.ca/Manitoba. We'll do the list on the air. Get a chance here before the top of the clock. Right now, we're going to turn to our medical column. Experts are saying the rise in diabetes cases worldwide is posing a risk for the health of hundreds of millions of people. There's a new report published in the medical journal The Lancet. It says over 800 million adults are now living with diabetes. That is nearly double previous estimates from 1900. That was about 35 years ago only, one generation ago. Dr. Raj Bardwaj has details today, as I mentioned, on our medical column.
Good morning, Marcy.
Wow, that's quite a way to frame it, right? Tell us about this report.
Yeah, so this was a big review. Over 1,100 studies looked at diabetes rates in over 130 different countries around the world. It was based on blood sugar readings of over 141 million adults. So they found that the largest increases in diabetes rates were in low and middle income countries. And, luckily the rates didn't rise much in richer countries like Western or Central Europe or Canada. They also looked at treatment coverage around the world for diabetes. And again, Canada did pretty well, which isn't surprising given our healthcare system as it exists currently and given that we're a prosperous country. But that's not to say that diabetes is not a problem in Canada. It certainly is. I mean, according to Public Health Agency of Canada, back in 2021, about 3.7 million Canadians were living with diagnosed diabetes. Probably another 750,000 or so met the criteria for having diabetes but weren't diagnosed or weren't aware of their condition. And probably another 2.5 million of us had blood sugar levels suspicious for pre-diabetes, which typically progresses to type 2 diabetes over time.
Can you remind us again the different types of diabetes?
Yeah, sure. So diabetes, first of all, is a condition where the body has trouble managing sugar or glucose levels in the blood. So our cells need glucose to use as fuel. There's a special hormone called insulin that's needed to get glucose from the blood into the cells. Insulin is like a key that you need to unlock the door on the cells to allow glucose to get into the cell. So when a person has diabetes, there's either a problem with insulin production or how sensitive your cells are to the insulin. So in type 1 diabetes, your body's immune system actually destroys the cells that make insulin. So people need insulin, so they need to inject it to survive. You don't have the key anymore. So type 1 diabetes accounts for about 5 to 10% of cases of diabetes. In type 2 diabetes, your body still makes insulin, but either doesn't make enough or your cells aren't as sensitive to it as they should be. So you still have the key, but it's like the lock is getting rusty and worn out, and now you need to really force the key into the lock to kind of open it, so to speak. So type 2 diabetes accounts for about 90-95% of cases of diabetes in Canada. Pre-diabetes means that your cells are starting to get insensitive to insulin. The lock is starting to get rusty, but it hasn't gotten bad enough that we can sort of, that we label you as having type 2 yet. And then there's another kind of diabetes, happens in about 10% of pregnant people. It's called gestational diabetes. It usually goes away after the birth of the baby, but it can be a predictor that moms might develop type 2 diabetes as they get older.
What might lead to the development of diabetes in a person?
So for type 1, it's a lot about the genetics of your immune system, basically, right? Because it's the immune system that attacks the insulin-producing cells. So it's a lot about genetics, and then it seems that sometimes, at least, there's an infection that triggers your immune system to kind of go wonky. And that infection is often a gut infection. So there's a family of germs called enteroviruses that are associated with developing type 1 diabetes, but it can happen after a mumps infection. It can happen after a COVID infection. So for type 2 diabetes, it's also partly genetic. People say, oh yeah, my dad got diabetic or developed diabetes as he got older. So there's definitely a family history issue there. But there are other factors. So carrying extra fat tissue makes cells more resistant to insulin. But not everyone who's overweight is going to become diabetic. It's more complicated than that. But the flip side isn't that complicated. Regular exercise and then eating a healthier diet can actually help to delay the onset of type 2 diabetes. The problem is that as we age, we tend to also put on weight. We tend to also move less. So we tend to go from normal to prediabetes to type 2 diabetes as people get older. But super important to get the blood tests done and see where you are on that continuum. Because a lot of people, like this study suggests, are on the continuum somewhere and don't know it.
What happens if a person's diabetes is not well controlled then? What are the long-term health effects?
And this is why the study is so sort of alarming to doctors. This doubling of the rate means that downstream there are going to be even more effects, because the human body isn't built to withstand high levels of glucose floating around for a long time. It should really go from your gut and slam into your cells and get used up and you're good. But when glucose floats around in the blood, it can damage the walls of the tiny little blood vessels. And we notice that damage all over your body. So we notice the damage in your eyes. That's called diabetic retinopathy, and it's the leading cause of blindness in people of working age in Canada. We notice the damage in your kidneys, where it can get bad enough that people need to go on dialysis machines because their kidneys don't work well anymore. We notice it in the blood vessels of your heart and brain. That's why diabetes is a risk factor for heart attacks and strokes. And we notice it in your nerves. That's called diabetic neuropathy. And it can lead to numbness of sort of, feet usually, and also hands, to the point where, people can step on a tack and not notice it until it gets infected, and then they notice it. But the good news is that if you keep your blood sugar levels under control, then most of those complications can be prevented.
Yeah, this year we were looking at one of those complications in Manitoba in the fall, you might recall, because diabetes-associated leg amputations in Manitoba were higher here than the national average. There was a report out about it. Before you go this morning, once a person has diabetes, is it possible to reverse it, or can people with prediabetes delay the onset of full-fledged diabetes?
Yeah, so for type 1 diabetes, that's where your cells have been basically destroyed, the insulin producing cells. We're still researching things like transplanting those cells that make insulin, or using stem cell treatments, things like that. But all of that is unfortunately still experimental. But for type 2 diabetes, which again, remember, accounts for 90-95% of cases of diabetes, especially if we start early, then absolutely we can basically put people's diabetes into remission. But it's not cured forever. It can come back if you stop working at it, but you can work at it. You basically need to naturally lower your blood glucose levels and increase your cells' sensitivity to insulin. And the biggest way to do that is weight loss.
All right, Dr. Bardwaj, thank you.
My pleasure.
That's our medical column. Well, coming up on the program today after 7. Can you make out those excited voices at Pinkham School? We're going to hear more from those kids on this World Children's Day. What do they have to say about being a kid in 2024, and what are their hopes for their futures? I'm looking forward to that. That's coming up. Right now, let's get to the news headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, some students and staff at the University of Manitoba are feeling confused and frustrated after security concerns about a man armed with a knife on campus yesterday. We'll hear the latest. And in northern Manitoba, a Cree Nation is soon going to add further restrictions to a state of emergency order to curb a spike in violence. More on that as well in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's, because of this active weather, get into the issues with commute.
Highway 1 closed from Austin to the Saskatchewan border, down Light Standard, Gateway, and McLeod, blocking Gateway. I'll have more after the news.
Check 511 for highway closures as well this morning. Note that it is snowy and wet in Winnipeg, but worse outside the city. And with school closures and bus closures, the full list List on air at 7:10. Go to cbc.ca/Manitoba for updates and stay with us. Lots more ahead.
Today on The Current.
You know, at its core, there is a real lack of information and education on all levels.
Nobody prepares you for quite the way it happens. That is how one woman described the experience of menopause. And a new study that shows how uninformed doctors, governments, employers, and women themselves are on that subject. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The U.S. Embassy in Kyiv is shut down today, and it is warning Americans be prepared to take shelter. The embassy says it received information about a significant air attack just hours after the United States made a policy U-turn. It says it will allow Ukraine to start using anti-personnel mines. Crystal Gomansing has more.
Russia released new videos today displaying its military might. CBC can't say when or where they were recorded, but they come as the United States announced it will give Ukraine anti-personnel mines. Their use is widely contested because of the indiscriminate harm they can cause. In 1997, Canada led the way as more than 100 countries signed a treaty banning anti-personnel mines from being produced, stockpiled, or used. This is the second weapons decision the United States has reversed its stance on in less than a week. There are growing fears the incoming administration could stop supporting Ukraine. A fear the Ukrainian president shared in an interview with Fox News Channel's Trey Yingst.
If they will cut, I think we will lose.
The Kremlin says the outgoing Biden administration is doing everything it can to continue the war while still in office. It's unclear how or if Russia will respond, but the United States, Canada, and Spain halted in-person services at their embassies in Kyiv. The U.S. State Department said it had specific information about a potential significant airstrike today. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
People in parts of British Columbia are waking up in the dark. Power was knocked out to thousands of homes and businesses as a bomb cyclone hit the province late yesterday. The storm brought hurricane-force winds and hammered Vancouver Island. Kevin Aquino Bravo is with BC Hydro.
We do prepare for storm season year-round, and our crews can activate storm response plans at a moment's notice. We do have a team of in-house meteorologists that have been tracking this weather system quite closely. So this definitely enabled us to ramp up our BC Hydro crews, call center crews, and our contractor crews as well.
The Northwest Pacific U.S. was also hit hard. In Washington state, at least one death is being blamed on the storm. Officials say a woman was killed when a tree branch fell on her in a homeless encampment near Seattle. Erwin Kotler is sharing his story about the threat to his life by agents of Iran. The renowned human rights advocate spoke to CBC News. He says he is still under 24/7 RCMP protection. But as Olivia Stefanovich reports, Kotler is not backing down from criticizing Iran.
I think we hold the regime accountable and send the message that we will not be intimidated.
In the face of an ongoing threat against his life, human rights champion Erwin Kotler says Iran won't stop him from speaking out against the regime.
You're really dealing with a collective danger to our human security.
Kotler says he found out more than a year ago from a source unknown he was in danger. That's when the RCMP began around-the-clock protection.
That wasn't a surprise to me because Iran had been escalating its own transnational, not only repression, but assassination.
As first reported in the Globe and Mail, Kotler says 3 weeks ago he became the target of a specific assassination plot by agents of Iran. A plan to unfold within 48 hours, foiled by police.
And that we don't discuss the level of threat, from whom the threat comes.
Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc.
It's not a Netflix series where we sort of tell people about some person that arrived at an airport on this date and he's staying at this hotel.
Even though Kotler's life appears to no longer be in imminent danger, he remains under 24/7 RCMP protection, with armored vehicles still stationed outside his home. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Convicted serial killer Paul Bernardo has a parole hearing scheduled for next week, but the parole board will not allow the families of his victims to attend in person. It says there are safety concerns. Tim Danson is the lawyer representing the families of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey. He sent a letter to the Justice Minister and the Parole Board of Canada arguing his clients have a right to be there.
Who is the person that is creating this safety security concern? Surely it's not the families. They've attended 2 previous parole hearings and they have acted with great grace and propriety at both hearings. So if it's Paul Bernardo himself who's the problem, then what on earth is he doing in medium security? They should be sent back to maximum security.
Bernardo is serving a life sentence for the kidnapping, sexual assault, and murders of the girls in 1992. He has been designated a dangerous offender, and last year he was transferred to a medium security facility. The Union for Canada Post Workers says negotiators are making progress, but there are a lot of issues to work through, including wage increases, working conditions, benefits, and weekend delivery. Contract talks are still going, and until the strike is resolved, Service Canada says it will wait to mail out 85,000 passports. Marina von Stackelberg has the latest.
Outside the depot in Ottawa, Canada Post mail sorters and carriers walk the picket line 24/7. One holds a sign that says, "I'd rather be working." Despite the strike, the Canadian Union of Postal Workers and the Crown Corporation continue to negotiate. Now the union says there's progress, thanks to a new special mediator brought in Monday by the federal government. The union says Canada Post is finally starting to move on what it calls pressing issues.
That's the first positive news we've heard for a while. We've been at this for over a year.
Godwin Smith drives a Canada Post delivery truck. He's also vice president of the local Ottawa Union.
I am tired. I've been 32 years working for Canada Post. This is going to be my 4th strike, and every time Canada Post waits until the government intervene before they start talking.
So far, Canada's Labour Minister says he's focused on getting a deal through negotiations, not through binding arbitration or ordering striking employees back to work. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
Thick, dense smog is covering parts of New Delhi. People are protecting their faces with masks and whatever else they can find. They are still trying to go about their daily lives, but this rickshaw driver says it is difficult.
We are so disturbed by the pollution. My eyes are irritated and watery. It feels like someone has put chili powder in them. There is a lot of difficulty in breathing. I feel suffocated.
Delhi's government has ordered 50% of its staff to work from home. Most schools have turned to online learning, and people are being told to stay indoors if they can. Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai testified today in his national security trial. The 77-year-old founder of the now-closed tabloid Apple Daily faces 2 counts of colluding with foreign forces and another charge of sedition. He has pleaded not guilty to the Beijing-imposed charges. Reporter Laura Westbrook is following the trial.
In the pouring rain, around 100 people queued up to hear the testimony of pro-democracy media tycoon Jimmy Lai for the first time. Among them was 63-year-old Sum Ho.
He's rich, but he still give up his privilege to be an outspoken man for justice, freedom and democracy.
Lai's defense lawyer Stephen Kwan questioned him about his connections to politicians in Taiwan and the US, including former Vice President Mike Pence. Lai testified that his trip to the US Capitol was his idea to share what was happening in Hong Kong during the time of the widespread protests in 2019. And during his meeting with the former Vice President, he did not ask Pence to take any action. This is a rare chance for a prominent pro-democracy figure to have his voice heard. Others are behind bars with restrictions on speaking out. Earlier, Lai's son, Sebastian, told me he's worried about his 77-year-old father's health and is campaigning for his release.
This is a case where the Hong Kong government is essentially destroying its own rule of law in order to prosecute but also persecute my father for his pro-democracy beliefs and his peaceful campaigning.
On Sunday, the Hong Kong government said it is handling the case in accordance with the law. Laura Westbrook for CBC News, Hong Kong.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Look, Robin, Dave McGowan, Trevor Deneen, Ryan Grobetti.
No, our names are all
No
there?
way, the names are there. That's so wild. Amazing. Someone says girls rule.
Well, all over Manitoba, there are houses that hold fond childhood memories that live there long after you've grown up and maybe even moved away. We have a lovely story on this World Children's Day about CBC host Trevor Deneen and his childhood buddies, who you heard there. They cold knocked on the door of a house in St. James, and they wanted to find out if their beloved clubhouse was still under the stairs. Stay tuned for that. Plus, I mentioned World Children's Day. We're going to hear from children at Pinkham School today in Winnipeg, telling us about their hopes and dreams for the future and also what it's like being a kid in 2024. And to serious news at 7:50, according to a new report by the Canadian Mental Health Association, Manitoba has the highest rate of suicide in the country. We're going to talk to the Canadian Mental Health Association Manitoba chapter about where we go from here and how that is showing up in the work that they do in our community. So stay tuned for that conversation. We have a really, really challenging day in the weather. We have school closures and traffic and highway closures up for you in a moment. Let's go to Heather Wells, though, right now with our CBC News headlines. Hi.
Hi there, yes. And as temperatures begin to drop, and they will take a serious dive by this time next week, we're going to be quite cold. As those temperatures drop, concern is growing in Winnipeg for the safety of people on the streets. We're going to hear what some shelters are doing to prepare. As well, healthcare workers say getting more hospital beds operational in Manitoba can't come soon enough. As part of yesterday's throne speech, the government committed to 102 staffed healthcare beds. Doesn't say where those beds are going to be, but we'll hear some reaction to that in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, here's a little gift, I guess, for World Children's Day. If you don't love school kids, a lot of you are going to be staying home. Because of the weather and the storm systems and situations this morning, the roads are a big mess, especially in Westman and parts in the north. So here's what is closed completely, first of all, for schools. So completely closed in the Franco-Manitoban School Division, St. Lazare School, Plain Days School in Laurier, La Source School in Shiloh, and Our Lady of Lourdes School. In addition, Beautiful Plains School Division, Park West School Division, Region A of Prairie's Rose School Division, Prairie Spirit School Division, Rolling River School Division, Fort LaBosse School Division, and Park West School Division all closed. Southwest Horizon School Division buses and classes are canceled as well, but staff there are assigned to work from home. And now to the bus cancellations. Mountain View School Division has canceled buses. Gilbert Rosset School in St. Claude has canceled buses. In addition, the Brandon School Division won't operate rural buses. And if you can't get to school, it's at your discretion, parents, but please call the school if you have travel required and you're not going to be able to make it. One last note, Alexander, O'Kelly, and Spring Valley schools in the Brandon School Division are also closed. That's the list to this hour. Abby is here with your weather.
Across the province, we're looking at snow and winter warnings, which is in effect for most of the regions due to heavy snow that is coming that way. We see that snowfall warning in effect for Thompson and surrounding areas. The snow is expected to continue throughout the day. We're going to see about 10 to 25 centimeters of snow accumulating by the evening. Then we come to western Manitoba, where we're seeing heavy snowfall and strong northwesterly winds gusting all the way to 70 kilometers. That will be affecting Brandon, Dauphin, and the surrounding areas, which will be creating poor visibility. Though the snow is going to gradually ease off later in the day, we're going to see a total accumulation of about 15 to 30 centimeters. And then if we come down to southwest east western part of the province, where we have that strong winter storm warning, which is still in effect. It's going to be affecting Winnipeg, Gimli, Steinbach, and Morris. Now, this says that the rain is going to be transitioning to snow because we've been seeing this since yesterday, and we're expecting some areas would get 10 to 30 millimeters of rain, and then for the snow, we're going to see between 0 and 15 for for the Winnipeg area, and then the western part of the Red River Valley could see about 10 to 15 centimeters of snow by the evening. But currently, Winnipeg, we are at 1. We saw light snow falling earlier. Now we're seeing that rain that will be mixing with snow, which would change fully to snow by the afternoon. And the winds will be light, becoming breezy from the northwest later. We'll get a high of +2 in Winnipeg today.
It's just messy and wet. We're going to see what melts on contact too, but the amounts you're talking about might end up with a little bit of light shoveling around here, at least, certainly to the west. All right, let's give Abby a break. He's been so busy this morning. And let's hand it off to Corey, who's also been busy on the phones.
Yeah, we're going to talk with highway closures first. Western Manitoba, highway number 1 from Austin all the way to the Saskatchewan border closed both ways right now. And if you're in Brandon, Dauphin, Russell, you can assume that the highways immediately around you are probably closed entirely. So Brandon, of course, number 1 going right through you, closed, as I just mentioned. Also highway number 10 going south of you, also closed to about Minto. So heads up there. Up in Dauphin, everything around you is closed. So we're talking Highway 10 that takes you through the park, closed right now. Highway 5 to St. Rose de Lac, and then down along the east edge of the park, also closed right now. Also those highways running north from Dauphin, Highway 20, as well as Highway 10 closed right now. A similar case in Russell as well. The Highway 83 that takes you to Roblin, also closed right now. And Highway 16 going south of Russell, closed as well to about Foxwarren. So lots of highway closures, and every other highway in western Manitoba and even southern Manitoba as well, you can assume is poor to treacherous conditions, including Highway 75. I'm looking at cameras there. Also very, very snow covered as well right now. So just careful if you do need to hit the highways, but if you can avoid it, please do. Here in the city, down traffic light standard at Gateway and McLeod, blocking the entirety of Gateway, Vic says, on the commuter line. So maybe some pandemonium there this morning. So the lights are kind of half working and there's a lot of confusion going on. So careful there. Southbound Main Street as well, just before Chief Peguis Bridge. Also going to see some issues. There was a 3-car collision earlier, maybe an issue still. There's a fire truck on scene. Keep right to get around that, says Sarah. If you see anything else going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, today is a special day. Those are the voices of some students at Pinkham School here in Winnipeg, and they are ready to talk about World Children's Day. It's a day that was first established in 1954, initially as Universal Children's Day. It's celebrated on November 20th every year because that is the date in 1959 when the UN General Assembly adopted the Declaration of Rights of the Child. So on a morning where it's just snowy and rainy and it's been kind of a gloomy week, we also wanted to find out how kids manage to find hope as well. So what's it like from their perspective, and what are their hopes for the future? The CBC's May McKillop caught up with some of the students at Pinkham School, as I mentioned, to get their perspective. Here's some of their words of wisdom.
So today is World Children's Day. What do you love about being a kid?
I get to read books and play basketball. We can make friends. That I get to go to school and learn, and go to places with my mom and get my ears pierced.
That I get free education.
What do you love about Pinkham School?
That I get to learn.
And what do you love about being a kid?
To play with friends, so that I get protection.
What makes you feel protected?
With my parents around.
What about other kids? What makes you feel safe or protected as a kid?
When my dad helped me to fix my bike at school, because Pinkham School is a safe place, and Pinkham School is a family.
What about you?
When I'm with my papa and my grandma. And when I feel upset, my mom cheers me up.
Your mom. So that's another question I had. When you're feeling upset, who cheers you up?
My friends and my family.
What about if your friend is having a hard time? What are some things that you would do to cheer them up?
I'd probably get the person that hurt him and force him to say sorry.
Why is it important to say sorry after you've hurt someone?
Because if you grab a piece of paper and crumble it up and keep bullying him, and then you keep saying sorry, is that paper fixed?
If your friend is having a tough time, how do you cheer them up?
I give them a tissue so they can wipe their tears.
Yeah, have a little cry, right? Right on. What about you?
Play with them. I would ask them what happened and then tell the teacher.
So talking to them about it, hey? That's a good one.
I would give them a tissue and ask for a hug and give them some space to calm down because they need some space from some people for now.
What about you? If your friend is having a hard time, what would you do to cheer them up?
I'll tell them any embarrassing things I've done.
I'll tell them funny stuff what I did with me when I was watching funny videos and tell them that I fell on the ground when I was watching funny videos and they would laugh.
For World Children's Day, why should we be celebrating kids?
So it can make the children happy. Because children, they're safe. Because they're important. We celebrate kids because some kids in countries, they don't have homes and they have to work for food and stuff. So that's why you should celebrate kids.
How does that make you feel as a kid to think about other kids who may not have the things that you have?
Sad.
Why do you think kids are important?
Because they're unique.
What makes kids unique and different from adults?
We're all different from other families. Because they can learn from their adults.
What do you think adults could learn from kids?
To have fun.
To participate.
Gym?
Gym?
Yeah, to have gym.
Like exercise?
Yeah. To laugh and have a lot of fun. To play with their kids.
I think they should take things easy and rest.
So you have a piece of advice for us.
My mom said, if you see someone homeless, don't let them down and don't make fun of them because they don't have a roof over their head like we do.
If we think about all the kids out there in the world, kids your age or maybe they're younger than you or a little bit older than you, if you could have one wish for all the children in the world, what would you wish for?
Give them home. I'd give people food and $500.
$1 million.
What about you?
1 billion. I'll give him a food and a house and $1 billion. I would give them a big house and give them lots of food and give them $1 trillion.
And what about you?
I wish $50. I wish that everyone had a house too.
I'll give them free education.
If we have some adults who are listening to the radio who need some cheering up, what could they do right now, today, to cheer up a bit?
I learned this from my teacher. You could use your hands, spread 5 out, use your finger, and then when you go up, you breathe in, and when you go down, you breathe out.
So when you trace up your finger, you take a breath in, and when you trace back down that finger, you take a breath out, and you repeat that. Well, we got 5 fingers on this hand, so 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
What would 5 deep breaths do for someone who's having a hard time?
Probably calm them down.
And make them happy.
Here at Pinkham, you have a motto, right?
Come prepared to learn.
Come prepared to learn, and that starts with a
C. Act Actively listening, and that's the A.
R, ready to participate and inquire.
And there's one more.
Everybody belongs.
And what does that spell?
I feel better. I'm also doing that breathing thing. Thank you, kids from Pinkham School. By the way, if you want to see their beautiful artwork and some of their school and May McKillop sitting with the kids and their faces, they're so cute. Please go to our YouTube stream and you can check it all out. And the story there will live there with that video. So those words of wisdom and kindness on this World Children's Day come from the kids of Pinkham. Pinkham is, by the way, on Pacific in Winnipeg. The occasion commemorates the Declaration, as I mentioned, of the Rights of the Child, which has been recognized since 1954. So big thanks to the students we heard there: Jacob, Mayesh, Daniel, Exie, Fabian, Nathaniel, Kiana, Lexi, and Halimo for sharing their very, very special insights with us on this World Children's Day. We've got a fun story coming up as well. Just want to mention at 7:40 about a childhood club host that our colleague at CBC, Trevor Deneen, thought had been lost, but apparently it still existed in a house in St. James, and they went in search of it, he and his childhood buddies. So it's a really fun story. That's after the news. Right now, it is 1 degree in Winnipeg. It's misty and wet out there, and a high today of 2 degrees. Our snow will come this evening more. The rain's going to change to snow a little bit later, maybe up to 5 centimeters in Winnipeg, as high as 10 to 15 around Lake Winnipeg, and even more to the west and the north. Lots of school closures. Please check it out online, and we'll have the full list for you at 7:40. In addition, I just should mention the travel situation here. So in Winnipeg, just a couple of things. Flashing red lights, Inkster and McPhillips could still be an issue. We also have Gateway and McLeod. A light standard has been affected there. Apparently, it's kind of confusing through that intersection. Take it easy. Highway 75 is snow covered. Highway 1 from Austin to the Sask border is closed. And a lot of highways around Roblin, Russell, and Dauphin closed as well. So check 511 if you're planning on heading out. It is time now for morning sports. Scott Regehr joins us now. Hello to you.
Hey, Marcy.
So let's start with the NHL, where the Jets are back in the win column.
Yeah, after being shut out 5-0 in their previous game against Paul Maurice's Florida Panthers, Marcy, the Jets got some revenge last night against the defending champs. Mark Scheifele was the catalyst. He had a hat trick, while Morgan Barron, of all people, nearly added another hattie. He scored twice into an empty net. The first of those empty netters came on a pool-like bank shot. From inside his own blue line, he shot the puck past 2 Panthers players to get the rebound off the center ice boards. Barron, a graduate of Cornell University, was asked whether his Ivy League pedigree aided in his shot selection.
Some of the guys are making fun of me for school in Cornell, but that's not it at all, I promise. Just kind of opened up, and I didn't have a lane at it, so my thought was just kind of get it down to the other end of the ice, and I figured if I'm going to shoot it down anyway, I may as well try to put it in a place where it has a chance, and it was good to see one going.
Well, Barron is coming off of a career high in goals scored last season, Marcy. This is the first multi-goal game of his career. And so the Jets back on the winning track. They are off until Friday, where they begin an extended road trip starting in Pittsburgh. That's kind of too bad because it was a sellout last night, which was great to see. I'm sure Paul Maurice's return had something to do with that.
Let's talk about Canada's men's soccer team, where it was a wet, windy, and in the end, winning night for the team.
Yep. All to the dismay of their opponents, Marcy. The temperatures in Suriname, after all, at this time of year, hover around 30 Celsius. But it wasn't the chilly weather that did them in last night in Toronto.
Suriname can't clear. David finishes. Here's Johnny.
Johnny, as in Jonathan David, who scored the winner last night, becoming the country's all-time leading goal scorer amongst men. The eventual 3-0 victory, Marcy, sees Canada through to the CONCACAF Nations League semifinals, which will be held next March. Canada's captain from last night, Stephen Eustachio, explained the importance of winning this tournament.
It matters a lot. I think at the end of the day, a player's career is defined by the trophies he's won. And I think for this project, for this, for the plan we have to really make a good World Cup in 2026, I think it has to start with trophies. And, March is a very good opportunity for us to get one.
There you are. That is Stephen Eustachio. Canada's men have only ever won one major tournament before. That's when Craig Forrest goalied his country to the Gold Cup title in 2000. Some will remember, Marcy, Canada only advanced in the playoffs in that tournament by winning an arbitrary coin toss. So as a lifelong follower of this side, I'm still waiting for a trophy won with conviction, and Jesse Marsh's team is certainly playing with that. They'll take on Mexico in Los Angeles next March.
And shifting to tennis, a notable farewell at the Davis Cup.
Adios in this case. After establishing himself as the sport's best ever player on clay, and for many pundits, the best player period, Rafa Nadal lost in the final match of his career. Nadal may have 22 Grand Slam titles on his resume, but that's not how he wants to be remembered.
Just a kid from a small village in Mallorca that follow their dreams, worked as hard as possible to be where I am today. I am one of these that I have been very lucky that the life gave me the opportunity to live unforgettable experiences because of tennis. I just want to be remembered as a good person and a kid that follow their dreams and achieved more than what I ever dreamed.
Such a humble superstar, Rafa Nadal. Spain is out. Canada's still alive. They're playing a semifinal right now against Germany on CBC.
All right, thanks a lot, Scott.
You betcha.
That's Scott Regehr with Morning Sports. Still ahead, as I mentioned, all over Manitoba, how there are houses that hold fond childhood memories and they live long after maybe you've grown up and moved away. We've got a great story on this World Children's Day about CBC host Trevor Deneen, who cold knocked on a door of a house in St. James to see if his beloved clubhouse still existed under the stairs. Stay tuned. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, Winnipeg is wet to start Wednesday. A bit of mist out there right now. It's 1 degree. The rain is going to change into snow this afternoon. Today's high is 2. Well, Winnipeg appears to have been spared a wintry blast, but it is a different story in western and northern Manitoba. Snow and wind are creating hazardous driving and have prompted a long list of highway closures. Among the well-traveled highways shut down by this system is the Trans-Canada. It is closed from Austin all the way to Regina. Also closed are parts of highways 5, 10, 16, 45, and 83. And all of this, of course, impacting schools. Many school divisions have canceled classes and buses throughout western Manitoba. We have a complete list up on our website, and Marcy will also update you after this newscast. Healthcare professionals say the government needs to attach more urgency to its plans to staff more hospital beds. The province committed to 102 additional beds in yesterday's throne speech. It doesn't say where those beds will be. Jason Linklater at the Manitoba Association of Healthcare Professionals wonders how hospital services can expand when there are more than 1,000 vacant positions, including paramedics, social workers, and diagnostic technicians.
There is good things happening. It's just not happening fast enough or in a way that allows it to be done practically with what the employers have to work with.
Linklater says the province recently recruited an MRI technologist intended to work in the north, but that person ended up taking a job in Saskatchewan instead. Confused and frustrated. That's how some students and staff at the University of Manitoba are feeling after security concern about a man armed with a knife on campus. It happened yesterday. Some now question why it took the university so long to notify students and staff. A U of M professor says the Faculty Association and administration meet regularly to discuss safety policies and procedures. Eric Thompson is the Faculty Association president, and he says these policies need to be reviewed again.
I hope they look and see the concern of students and the concern of staff that they didn't get the information they felt they needed in a timely and useful fashion, and think about how to do that better.
Thompson says he will meet with the university administration later this week to discuss yesterday's response to the threat. Cold weather is coming, but not everyone in Winnipeg has a warm place to go. End Homelessness Winnipeg is ready to help with its winter weather response plan for the season. Its partner organizations like the Salvation Army are busy ramping up services to help people in need. Mark Stewart at the Salvation Army Center of Hope says their outreach vans run overnight every day with a focus on outreach to people facing sexual exploitation and human trafficking.
We're handing out mitts, we're handing out gloves. If people need a ride to hospital or back to shelter, we would provide those services. And it's also just to, if somebody wants to get in the back and have a coffee and warm up for a minute, we also provide that service.
Stewart says the Salvation Army is putting out 20 extra emergency beds at its shelter, as well as 20 beds for refugee women who need a warm place to sleep in the colder weather. People in a northern Manitoba Cree Nation will soon need a permit to take alcohol into the community. The measure is part of a set of stricter restrictions coming under a state of emergency order in Nisitchewasik Cree Nation. Chief Angela Levasseur hopes the changes curb a spike in violence.
We are implementing stricter measures based on incidents that have happened and also the feedback from a lot of our citizens that they don't feel safe, that they want us to address the violence. And the violence, of course, is 9 times out of 10 alcohol and drug related.
Nisitchewasik is also only allowing members and authorized visitors into the community. As well, council is extending the overnight curfew for minors and forbidding gang activity. The new restrictions in Nisitchewasik Cree Nation take effect December 2nd. Well, Hats hit the ice last night.
Shifley with the hat-trick goal.
Mark Shifley in the third period on TSN, scoring in each period, in fact, as the Winnipeg Jets beat the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers 6-3. Coach Scott Arniel says Shifley is showing his maturity as a player.
When he makes those plays, he knows he's playing, seeing Barkov, he's seeing Bennett's line, he's seeing elite players, he knows he has to defend, and that's KC, that's Gabe, that's Vladdy's line. They all take responsibility for that, and then when your best players are doing that, your top players are doing that, it sure makes it easier to sell to everybody else.
Morgan Barron scoring twice, Kyle Connor with a single, and Connor Hellebuck making 20 saves. A sellout crowd had plenty to cheer about, and it'll be a little while before those fans see their team again in Winnipeg. The Jets hit the road now for 6 games in 11 days, starting in Pittsburgh on Friday. You can find more Manitoba news, including details about last night's game. Head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Come back. Winter's here. It's your season, Jets.
It's hockey season, yes.
Let's get into the forecast. Thank you, Heather. Abby, it's time for the regional look.
Yeah, we're looking at snow and weather warning in effect with heavy snow expected, especially in the west and the northern part, the northern regions. Winnipeg currently 1 at the Forks. It is misty at the airport. We should expect a messy start to the day with rain changing to snow, and then we're expecting for this part of the province about 5 centimeters by the evening once the system goes through. Conditions will improve throughout the day, but the snow will continue until midnight. And today's high for the city, we get to 2 degrees with breezy northwest winds. Heading west to Brandon, -5 and light snow you're seeing blowing at this time. We're looking for a high of -5 today with breezy conditions easing later, and that winter storm warning is in effect. We should be seeing 2 to 5 centimeters accumulation in that region. Thompson, snowfall warning in effect with up to 25 centimeters of snow expected by this evening. It is currently -1. The snow is falling and drifting, so take it easy out there. Today's high will stay around 0 with the snow continuing throughout the day. Further north in Churchill, we're seeing light snow. Temperature sitting at -1 at this time. Freezing drizzle and the fog you're noticing will stay with you throughout the day, and the temperature will definitely stay steady near this -1 you're feeling at this time. Dauphin, under that winter storm warning also, we have about 30 centimeters of snow expected by the evening. Currently, you are at -4. Light snow you're seeing, this will stay with you throughout the day. Some areas will see 5 centimeters accumulating, and then breezy conditions will ease later in the day. Your temperatures will be dropping to around -9 and later. Gimli at 2 degrees, light rain you're seeing. This will turn to snow later in the day, and the forecast for the rest of the Interlake region calls for snow with up to about 15 centimeters accumulation. Expect temperatures to stay around 3 degrees today. Steinbach, we have a special weather statement for you. Rain will be changing to snow with up to about 15 centimeters expected. Currently, it is 0. Similar condition for Morris. We're going to see about 15 centimeters accumulation. Already hearing that people are pushing snow in that part of the province in the highway. Right now, you are at 3. You should see about some areas will see 2 to 4 centimeters accumulation. So it's more like a snowy, breezy condition in most of the areas with temperatures hovering between -5 and -3.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
And things get updated at 11 a.m. Every day, right, from Environment Canada and also from our newsroom here. So So make sure you watch how these weather patterns are going to move. Let's talk about school closures here and also bus cancellations. Here's what is closed today because of the weather Abby was just mentioning. So closed today entirely. Beautiful Plains School Division, Park West School Division, Region A of Prairie Rose, Prairie Spirit, Rolling River, Fort LaBosse, Park West, all closed. Southwest Horizon closed, but staff are assigned to work from home. In addition, Mountain View School Division buses are canceled. Brandon School Division, no rural buses. Alexander O'Kelly and Spring Valley schools are closed. Attendance at parental discretion. If you have to travel, call the school if you need. Bus cancellation also in Gilbert Rosset and St. Claude. And in addition, a few Franco-Manitoban School Division schools are closed entirely. St. Lazare, Plain Days, La Source, and Our Lady of Lourdes. Big list, but you likely know by now if you're not going to school. Let's talk travel. Here's Corey.
Highway 1 right now closed, starting from Austin both ways, all the way to the Saskatchewan border. If you're in Brandon, also Highway 10 south of Brandon to Minto closed as well, both ways. Up in Dauphin, all the highways immediately surrounding Dauphin are closed right now. So that does include number 10 that runs through Riding Mountain. Also Highway 5 taking you through to St. Rose de Lac, and then south along the east edge of the park also closed right now. And those highways north of Dauphin, Highway 20 that takes you up to Winnipeg, goes even further to Camperville, also closed right now. Similar case for highways 10 right now, the north of Dauphin, taking you north to Cowan as well. Russell closed as well. Not Russell isn't closed. The highway is closed north of Russell, taking you from
Take a break, Russell.
Yeah, taking you north to Robin. That highway between you closed as well. So all other highways, as you can imagine, in Western Manitoba, very poor conditions right now, poor visibility, covered, including Highway 75 south of the city as well. So just be careful if you're hitting the highways. Avoid it if you can. Here in the city, Gateway Road right now, just letting you know, at McLeod, a multi-vehicle collision and emergency crews are blocking the northbound curb lane at McLeod. There's a down light standard we heard about earlier. If you see something else, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, next on the show, a lovely story to mark World Children's Day that grew out of a basement in St. James. When CBC host Trevor Deneen and his childhood friends Ryan Grobetti, Robin Friend, and Dave McGowan parted ways back in 1989, they closed the door on their Killer Bees clubhouse as well. So that clubhouse, which was a hive of activity for the 4 active boys, was actually a cubbyhole under a stairwell in a Winnipeg house. This summer, 35 years later, Trevor, who's the host of CBC's Now or Never, wanted to know if what he called his childhood happy place still existed. So he reunited with his friends and he set about convincing a complete stranger to let them inside their house to look around. Trevor joined me in studio to share what happened next.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, great. It's always nice to see you.
Always lovely being back here.
So set the scene for us. Who are these Killer Bees?
The Killer Bees, Marcy, they were my group, like my childhood best friends. Like, as you said, like Ryan Gerbetti, Robin Friend, Dave McGowan. We grew up in St. James together. We all went to Heritage Victoria School, and like everything we did together. Like we played sports together. We watched like old like movies like Karate Kids and like Goonies and all these like American Ninja movies together. We watched wrestling, and literally anything we did had to be with each other. And like when we just spent so much time together. Those are your childhood pals.
So you named yourselves the Killer Bees?
I always wondered, like, I think the name came from, we all watched wrestling, and there was a tag team in wrestling called the Killer Bees. And we thought, I think our little childhood brains were like, that's the coolest name ever. And so we called ourselves the Killer Bees.
So we're gonna hear what happened when you went in search of your clubhouse in this house. But first, how did the reunion come together?
Well, it was funny because I'd always wondered if this clubhouse was something that was just in my brain, because like, you know how you get older and you have these memories of your childhood, and if there's no one there to corroborate them, you think to yourself, like, how much did I make up over time? How much is real? How much is not?
Got it.
And so I thought one day I was gonna reach out to these guys who I hadn't spoken to in 30 years since grade 6 ended, because I just wanted to see if what I remembered was true about this place. So I sent out like a Facebook message, and all 3 of them got back to me instantly. Like within an hour, all 3 of them were just like, this is amazing.
And as we're about to hear, all the Killer Bees remembered the clubhouse as fondly as you did.
Good day, sir. Holy man. Come on in. How you doing? Yeah, you too. You too, man. It's been a long time. Holy jeez.
How you doing, brother?
I'm living.
Here, check out this friendly face.
What's going on, buddy?
It's been a long time.
We've all grown up.
We have the least amount of gray, but I have the least amount of hair.
You know what? What you got left is still gray.
Yeah, I know.
What do you remember about the clubhouse?
I remember like wood, like kind of like wood frame. You kind of had to like move around. I remember there being like some carpets and stuff in there.
That's right. There was rolls of carpet.
Yeah.
But it was panel board, but there's rolls of carpet in there, which we used as kind of seats.
We used to have like comic books. There was drawings of bees. We had bees around the place.
We wrote our names. We had like all these pictures. I don't know who was the artist. It wasn't me because I can't draw a bee. I think it was either you or Dave.
I don't know if I did the drawings. I remember them for sure though.
I would love to open that thing up and to see all these crappy bee drawings all whipping across there.
You know what we got to do is like, there's crevices up in certain spots. Maybe we stuck something up there that somebody didn't take down yet.
Or I was also thinking maybe they just drywalled right over that panel board. So no, let's just bring a pry bar. We're gonna get in.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna get in.
Oh, look at there. There she is.
There it is. All right, let's go knock and see what happens.
So you literally, not with a pry bar, just showed up at this house. What happened?
Yeah, it's I gotta tell you, my wife specifically was like, Trevor, like I don't know if it's a good idea for 4 guys to just show up at a random person's door and ask if they
Thank
can
you,
go
Allie.
in. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, thank you. But we had to. We all of us just thought like, you know what? Let's just see what happens. Like none of us thought we didn't even know if we're gonna get in, but we knocked on this door and this is what happened. Hello there.
How are you?
How are you doing?
Not too bad.
I have one of the most oddest things to probably tell you right now. I work for CBC Radio, and this house here used to be his childhood home.
Oh, wow. This is where I grew up from age of 4 till 22 or something like that. Yeah.
And we were childhood friends, and we haven't seen each other in 30 years.
Oh, man.
And so we got together because when we were kids, there's a crawl space underneath the staircase downstairs.
Yep.
Yeah. And that was our clubhouse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so we were getting together in hopes that we might be able to see the old clubhouse again real quickly.
Well, I'd have to get my wife's permission.
Please do.
They want to take a look at that where they used to play when they were young. A clubhouse. It's in the basement
Under
there.
the stairs.
Under the stairs there. Remember there's a crawl space there?
You're going to let us? Oh my gosh.
If you go into that doorway from behind the couch,
Yeah.
if you go inside that spot, there's like a little latch on there, and I always wondered.
That was our latch.
That was us.
That was our clubhouse latch, so no one could get in. Do you mind if we move this couch a bit?
There it
It's
is.
got the same floor in there still.
No way.
No, everything's still in here. The bees are still on there.
No, they aren't.
Yeah, they are.
Shut up, the bees are there?
Yeah, they are.
Holy moly.
Hey, look, Robin, Dave McGowan,
Yeah.
Trevor Deneen, Ryan Grobetti.
Our names are all
No
there?
way. The names are there. That's so wild. Amazing.
Someone says girls rule and bees forever. And all our names. Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
Look at that. The Bees Club. That's awesome.
This is unbelievable that it's all still here original.
I got some paper, some gum.
No
Oh! The old lingerie ad!
I can't believe it.
That's too awesome.
I can't believe it.
What is going on? This is a time capsule.
This has exceeded my expectations by miles. This is unreal. Lingerie ads that we had cut out.
That we had so your folks wouldn't find it.
That's right. Right out of the Sears catalog.
Okay, for our YouTube viewers, they're gonna see that the lingerie ad from the Sears catalog is like the briefs are like bigger than what most people wear in public.
Oh, 100%,
It's really
completely.
risque.
Very risque back in the day.
How surreal was it to find this and all that intact?
Oh, Mars. It was I can't even explain it really. Like it was so wild. First off, it was wild just being back with those guys again. But like the icing on the cake was just opening that door and like to see your names written in your childhood handwriting, just the four of you, like one on top of the other, and all these old drawings. It just brings you back. It instantly brought us back to being kids. And the people I had in my life and the friends I had in my life that kind of allowed me to grow into the person I am. And I think kids nowadays, like, you have these bonds early in life that you make, and whether they stay with you always, the friends, that's not as important as like what happens in those moments. Because when I was a kid, I had these three guys. And these three guys, even though we haven't seen each other in 30 years, the second we got back together, it was like we hadn't missed a beat.
So you killer bees back together again? Are you like totally like now knocking on the St. James, like three grown men stuffing yourselves in the cubby? And
Oh, we're just knocking on doors all through St. James. We have like, it's nice though, like on birthdays, on things like that, we're all messaging each other now. And like one of our buddies just got married this past summer, and we're all like, congrats, which is something we hadn't been doing.
Thanks for sharing this today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
That's CBC Now or Never host Trevor Deneen with the story of his childhood happy place rediscovered. Where's yours? Or do you have a story of going back to a home you used to live in this city and someone let you in maybe to see, I don't know, a childhood place or renovation? I love those stories. If you've got a memory to share on this World Children's Day, or if you've got a story about rediscovering a house that you thought you'd left behind, we would love to hear about it. Or maybe you want to share about a spot you wish you could revisit from your childhood. 788-3205.
If there's one thing I know about Canadians, it's that we're kind. We want to help.
Doesn't take a big star or millions of dollars.
All it takes is one can, $1, or even 1 hour of your time.
In every corner of this country, people give. To their friends, to their families, to total strangers.
And this season, we will give again.
That's the thing about this place we call home.
It's kindness.
It connects us, brings us together.
And makes us stronger.
It's who we are. It's what we do.
We're going to keep doing it.
Help us make the season kind. Find ways to give to food banks in your community at cbc.ca/kind.
So make the season kind. Our day of programming to support Harvest Manitoba and its member agencies all across this province is coming up fast. Friday, December 6th. Make a date with your radio for stories and music and a day to come together to, make the season kind. 9 minutes to 8 o'clock. It's 1 degree in the city. It's misty and wet. We've got school closures, and Highway 1 is closed from Austin all the way to the Sask border, and in fact all the way to Regina. So it is just really icy, dicey, snowy, and in Winnipeg wet out there. Well, let's turn our attention to serious matters. Next on the show, in Manitoba, suicide is the leading cause of death for youth ages 10 to 17. Let that sink in. The leading cause of death. That's one of the findings in a new report from the Canadian Mental Health Association. In it, the organization looks at the state of mental health care in the country. It finds we still, of course, have a long way to go based on that and more when it comes to how we care for those struggling. Marion Cooper, CEO of CMHA's Winnipeg branch. We've reached her to get more insight. Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's talk about youth. I just mentioned this stat. Why do you think that is, that we continue to have such a struggle, or that youth continue to struggle in such a way in Manitoba?
Well, this is not new news. We've had this conversation before, and I think what we're still seeing is the complexity of the mental health needs across the province, particularly in rural and northern communities. Young people don't have access to mental health and addiction supports and are often, struggling with feeling very hopeless and isolated in those struggles. And so those suicide rates reflect that sort of persistent state of being that, is also connected to poverty and other social determinants that, make living really hard. So that sense of hopelessness really can set in for a lot of young people. And with that, we have a call to action.
Tell me about the call to action and how it surrounds access to supports. Like, where are we lacking when you look at this report by the numbers?
We're lacking in access to supports in timely ways. We know that there are wait lists, and we know that for families and for young people in remote northern communities, there aren't necessarily the services available in those communities. So people are having to leave their communities to get resources. There continue to be waits and sometimes complexity around how to go about finding the right resource. So, the solution is, one where we need to see more investments in mental health care. Manitoba's mental health, addiction, substance use spending is at 5.6% of the health budget, which is significantly lower than where it needs to be. It's lower than the national average, which is 6.3. And really we know that for a highly resourced and effectively functioning mental health substance use care system, we need to be closer to 9%. And so that's the work that we need to do. And we have a government that is making investments, so that's moving things in the right direction. But the reality is we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and we need to work with community partners to continue to find solutions and have our provincial government and our federal governments working together to get those resources.
So, Marion, did you say 5.6% here in Manitoba?
5.6%.
Yeah. And you want to get to 9, so that's like nearly a 40% increase. By the other numbers in this report, just so people know, we were mentioning suicide rate being higher than the Canadian average. But in addition, the rate of suicide for Indigenous people in our province is 4.6 times higher than for non-Indigenous people.
Yeah.
You talked about how much more money we should be spending. Where would you put it? Like, do you start? You're talking about how does that? How could that effectively change one of the things you said, which was more timely access to resources? Like, how do you make that happen if you get more money?
Well, it needs to be put in community. We need to continue to invest in a community mental health sector. That's where people live and have their everyday lives. So those services need to be accessible in the context of community. And so that's in our northern and remote communities. It's within our larger centers as well. So again, investments in hospital-based care is definitely something that I think, has been identified. But really, this report speaks to the importance of investing in the community mental health sector so that those resources are easily available. And we make it really clear where you go for help. And for parents who have young people who are struggling, that they know where to go for help, that when they call the Canadian Mental Health Association, that we would be able to direct them to services where there are no wait lists, where they can get same-day supports. More support for the integrated youth service delivery hubs, which are our huddles in Manitoba. So building that out. So those are ways that we know that if there's money on the table, let's direct it there.
What about the number of professionals that we have? You and I have had this conversation, not just against these stats, but for many years, about the number of psychologists or psychiatrists that would be accessible, but also would be, that there would be some kind of coverage for people. How big of a barrier is that here?
The big barrier in Manitoba, the role of psychologists in Manitoba is quite different than how you see psychologists functioning in other provinces. Most psychologists in our province are in private practice, which just makes it very inaccessible. So there's barriers financially for most people to be able to access that. Having more publicly psychologists embedded within the public system would be really, really important. And also having psychiatry that's more accessible. We have psychiatrists throughout the province, but many of them are in private practice and don't necessarily take patients, or those that are working within the public system, like hospitals and outpatient clinics, there's long wait lists. So it's not just about having the numbers in terms of the psychologists and psychiatrists, but having them placed in those environments where access could be really easy. And then also recognizing that for some people, they don't need a psychologist or a psychiatrist, that in fact, there's a whole host of mental health providers like social workers, community mental health workers, case managers, peer support workforce. These are all essential ingredients of a community mental health sector that needs to continue to be strengthened and invested in our province.
Thank you for touching the tip of what's in this comprehensive report. Thank you very much for being with us.
Oh, thank you.
It's Marion Cooper, CEO of the Canadian Mental Health Association in Winnipeg, looking at a new report that is out, looking at where we're lacking, as she said, in funding and in other aspects as well in terms of access to services in Manitoba, sharing out of a new report. If you want to read more about it, by the way, cbc.ca/Manitoba. 3 minutes to 8, Heather Wells is back.
Good morning. Well, healthcare workers say getting more hospital beds operational in Manitoba can't come soon enough. As part of yesterday's throne speech, the government committed to 102 staffed healthcare beds. It doesn't say where those beds will be. We're going to hear some reaction to that. And people in a northern Manitoba Cree Nation will soon need a permit to bring alcohol into the community. The measure is part of a set of stricter restrictions coming under a state of emergency order in Nissachawasset Cree Nation. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Highway 1 from Austin all the way through to Regina actually is closed because of terrible wintry conditions in Westman this morning. Also, check 511 before you're heading out because 75's got problems. A couple problems in the city as well. We're mostly wet, though, here in Winnipeg. 1 degree, a high of 2, so not much change. But we are going to change to snow from this rainy condition a little bit later today. And it's really gusty, windy in Brandon. Tons of school closures. The full list you can find online, and we'll read it out one more time at 8:10. But likely by now, if you're not going, you know you're not going. Thanks for joining us on this blustery morning. World Report is next. Stay with us.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
For a shy guy from Fort Worth, Texas, Leon Bridges has sure been getting a lot of attention over the past few years. The Grammy-winning musician will tell you about his most personal album yet, collaborating with John Mayer and singing Ray Charles for the Oban's. I could cry, could cry, could cry. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Nobody prepares you for quite the way it happens. That is how one woman described the experience of menopause in a new study that shows how uninformed doctors, governments, employers, and women themselves are on that subject. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Parts of British Columbia are beginning to clean up this morning. A bomb cyclone hit the province late yesterday. Thousands of homes and businesses are still without power. The storm brought hurricane-force winds to the south coast. It forced the closure of several roads, as well as Stanley Park. The CBC's Mira Baines has more.
Strong winds brought a tree crashing down into power lines in North Vancouver. Park rangers led people out of Stanley Park around 8 o'clock last night as trees scattered across the roadways. BC Hydro said that winds caused extensive damage to their systems and widespread power outages. Spokesperson Ted Olenek.
With a storm like this, we've seen a lot of trees come down on lines and bring lines down. We remind our customers, please stay 10 meters back from a down line. Never assume the line is de-energized because it's on the ground.
The windstorm has been posing challenges to start restoration work, according to BC Hydro. Some communities are expected to have their electricity out for several hours.
What I see, unfortunately, is a lot of candles in the Krogh household as opposed to lights on.
Nanaimo Mayor Leonard Krogh says emergency crews are working hard to help.
Whether it be people who are trying to get their dinners ready or attend to family events or whatever, the fact is the power outage has had a real impact.
BC's Transportation Ministry is warning drivers on Vancouver Island to avoid travel overnight into this morning. The ministry says downed power lines, debris, and fallen trees have resulted in multiple highway closures on the island. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
At least one death in the United States is being blamed on this bomb cyclone. It also hit the Pacific Northwest yesterday. One woman was killed when a tree fell on her in a homeless encampment in Washington state. High winds, heavy rain, and blizzard-like conditions are affecting some parts of Seattle. This morning, more than 500,000 customers there remain without power. In Northern California, several areas are under wind and flood warnings. Police in the Toronto area say a worrying trend could be making the city's gun problem even worse. Officers are starting to seize devices used to make handguns fire more rapidly. The CBC's Thomas Daigle has the details.
Listen to the difference between a typical semi-automatic handgun and one illegally equipped with a Glock switch. The small device, the size of a quarter, transforms the weapon into a fully automatic machine gun. And Glock switches are turning up on the street.
These guns can fire 900, 1,200 rounds a minute.
Matthew Passmore is a senior firearm officer with Toronto Police. He says after a downtown shootout last week that saw suspects fire nearly 100 rounds, officers seized multiple handguns outfitted with those Glock switches.
We are seeing these items installed by a variety of individuals with a variety of different backgrounds and experience levels.
In nearby Peel region, Police Chief Nishan Duriappa recently announced they'd seized more than 4 dozen of those devices.
The amount of rounds being discharged has also increased per incident.
Also known as auto sears, they appear all too easy to buy. CBC News found a website offering to sell and ship them to Canada. Criminologist Michael Arntfield sees it as part of a worrying trend.
There's an increasingly evolving and unpredictable criminal landscape in Canada now for which there's no real precedent.
He says it's the latest evidence that federal firearm legislation is hardly curbing the use of illegal weapons on the street. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
Ukraine's military says its air defenses have repelled a Russian attack, and it could be bracing for more. Air raid sirens have been ringing out in the capital. Ukraine's military says Russia sent more than 120 drones into the country. About half were shot down. 6 missiles were also reportedly launched. 2 were shot down. Multiple embassies in Kyiv are closed today. The U.S. Embassy says it received specific information there will be a significant air attack. Former Hong Kong publisher Jimmy Lai is testifying in his own defense in a national security trial. The pro-democracy media mogul is accused of trying to collude with foreign forces during anti-government protests in 2019. Lai is also accused of publishing seditious material. In a rare move, Lai has been allowed to testify publicly. Outside the courthouse, protesters talk about their support for Lai.
He's rich, but he still give up his privilege to be an outspoken man for justice, freedom, and democracy. So I think he has the spirit to represent the old Hong Kong spirit.
Lai is accused of trying to get U.S. officials, including former Vice President Mike Pence, to intervene in the protests in Hong Kong. Lai has denied the charges. Yesterday, 45 pro-democracy activists were sentenced to jail terms of up to 10 years. They were accused of plotting against the government by promoting opposition candidates. Human trafficking is on the rise in India's eastern state of West Bengal, and officials say it is directly linked to the impact climate change is having on people and businesses. It's happening in a region that is already considered to be one of the most vulnerable in the world when it comes to climate disasters. Our South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has more.
Kashmira reaches for a crinkly toy and hands it to one of her regulars. She's working steadily at her corner store in this small village in India's Sundarbans area. But for several years, she was unable to go outside, traumatized by the 6 months she spent forced into sex work.
I kept praying the pain would end. There were moments I even wanted to take my own life to make it all stop.
She was only 17 when a friend of her cousin handed her a cold drink.
He tricked me into his trap. He drugged me and took me to Delhi. I had no idea he was a trafficker.
She was eventually rescued by police, but her story is common in this part of India, where trafficking is on the rise. All of this pain is because of climate change, says Nihar Ranjan Raptan, the founder of local NGO Goranbos Gram Bikash Kendra.
The climate, heavy rainfall, cyclone, forced them to go to the outside.
To other Indian states for work. Villagers desperate to make a living after more severe cyclones keep hitting the area, ruining the soil and livelihoods. Raptan says it's not only about rescuing the trafficked girls. Trauma counseling when they return is also essential. His group helped Kashmira open up her store. My shop is my lifeline, she says. It made me whole again and eventually helped my neighbors accept me back without judgment. Salima Shivji, CBC News, India, Sundarbans, West Bengal.
New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt says her government will launch an investigation into a mysterious brain illness. There have been reports of an unknown neurological syndrome dating back to 2021, and health officials warned dozens of people were affected. As Bobby Jean McKinnon tells us, some New Brunswickers are demanding more investigation.
We're hopeful that she is going to follow through on this.
Stacey Quigley-Cormier's 23-year-old stepdaughter Gabrielle is one of the youngest patients with neurodegenerative symptoms. She says the hope is from newly elected Premier Susan Holt And her confirmation from Ottawa that its promise of $5 million to help study the mystery brain illness is still on the table, along with the support of the Public Health Agency of Canada.
And we want to leverage the expertise and the resources of the Public Health Agency of Canada to help us. And I think together we can build a robust, aggressive plan that is open and transparent.
In early 2021, the Blaine Higgs government launched an investigation involving federal experts into a cluster of 48 patients. Their symptoms range from painful muscle spasms to memory loss and behavioral changes. But then the province created its own oversight committee and concluded there was no mystery syndrome. Moncton-based neurologist Dr. Elie Marrero is standing by his theory of a new illness. He says some patients' blood work showed elevated levels of heavy metals found in herbicides like glyphosate and wants to see testing to rule out environmental toxins. Marrero says he has now notified public health of 366 patients from New Brunswick and 6 other provinces, including Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland, Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta. He says 42 people have died.
So that is certainly growing in an unprecedented manner beyond what we could predict.
Holt, meanwhile, says patients and their families deserve answers. She says people can expect to see progress as early as January. Bobby Jean McKinnon, CBC News, St. John.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. Most read story at cbcnews.ca is about the closed highways and the thousands of customers without power as a result of the bomb cyclone in BC. Read about that on our main page. And if you are low on power, go to our cbc.ca/light service to save on that power. I'm Marcia Young.
It is World Children's Day. You're listening to CBC's Information Radio on this November 20th. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for being with us. Well, Australia, speaking of kids, is trying to block children from accessing all social media sites. This half hour, we're going to hear how some Manitoba teens and tweens feel about the proposed ban and why one expert says it just won't work. In addition, we have welcomed in our province more than 20,000 Ukrainians in Manitoba since the start of the war. As you just heard on World Report, some serious developments this morning with embassies closing. We're going to hear more about that from a freelance journalist who is in Kiev this morning, so stay tuned. Plus, here at home, active weather, lots of highway closures, including number 1 from Austin all the way through Manitoba and into Saskatchewan to Regina. So big challenges. Your last look at school closures coming up in a few minutes. First, let's get other news from Heather Wells this morning at 8:11 a.m. Hi.
Hi there. Well, there's no getting around it. Winter is coming, has arrived in western Manitoba. And as temperatures are expected to drop in coming days, concern is growing in Winnipeg for safety of people on the streets. We're going to hear what Winnipeg shelters are doing as they're preparing to help more people. And some students and staff at the University of Manitoba are feeling confused and frustrated after yesterday's security concerns about a man armed with a knife on campus, and they're now questioning why it took the university so long to notify students and staff. We'll hear more in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Last look at school closures as promised. Here's the list. Brandon School Division, no buses outside in the rural areas. Alexander, O'Kelly, and Spring Valley schools are closed, and if you are not going to get to school, it's at parental discretion in those snowy rural areas. Please advise the school. Southwest Horizon School Division, buses and classes canceled. Staff, though, are assigned to work from home today. In addition, buses canceled in Mountain View School Division. Also, buses are canceled in Gilbert Rosé in St. Claude, so that is cancellation of transport. In terms of schools closed today, in the Franco-Manitoban Division, St. Lazare, Plain Days in Laurier, La Source School in Shiloh, and Our Lady of Lourdes School also closed. And finally, these are full closures. Beautiful Plains School Division, Park West School Division, Region A of Prairie Rose, Prairie Spirit, entire school division, Rolling River, Fort LaBosse, Park West, all closed. And Southwest Horizon, I mentioned that one already. Okay, that is the list you likely know. I know I'm rattling it off, but I know how this works. You're sitting at home leaning into the radio maybe and checking off if you hear your school. So stay home and snuggle in if that's you, or maybe help with the shoveling. 8:13 is the time. Abby is here with the actual forecast. Hi again.
Hi there. We're looking at snow and weather warnings in effect for most of the regions with heavy snow expected, especially in the west and the northern parts of the northern corner. We're going to see snowy and breezy conditions in most of these areas. Up north, we're looking at a snowfall warning in effect for the Thompson and nearby areas. Snow is expected to continue throughout the day. We're going to see about 10 to 25 centimeters of snow accumulating by the evening. The heaviest of the snow will be felt in the central parts of the province, but conditions will improve later. Switching to western Manitoba, where we're seeing heavy snowfall and strong westerly winds gusting all the way to 70 kilometers. This will be creating poor visibility at times due to that snow blowing here and there. That's why we have that snowfall warning in effect for Brandon, Dauphin, and the surrounding areas. Then we come to the southwestern regions. We have that special weather statement in effect for Winnipeg, Gimli, Steinbach, Morris. That rain will transition to snow along the northern part of the Trans-Canada Highway, and where we're seeing the rain already changing to snow. So you need to be careful because we're going to see snow accumulations, which will vary in areas like Lake Winnipeg. We're expecting 0 to 5 centimeters, while western Red River Valley could see about 10 to 15 centimeters by the evenings. By the evening, the conditions should improve as the system weakens. So travel will be difficult with snow and icy conditions on the road, so take care.
Corey?
Highway 1 right now from Austin to Regina actually is closed right now. So that includes going through Brandon all the way to the Saskatchewan border both ways. In Brandon, also Highway 10 between Brandon and Boissevain also closed right now. Up north in Dauphin, up north in western Manitoba in Dauphin, all the highways around Dauphin are closed right now, including Highway 10 through Riding Mountain, as well as Highway 5 east of there, just runs along the east of the park, and all the highways that get you between there. Those highways running north of Dauphin as well that take you to Camperville and Cowan also closed right now. The highway between Russell and Roblin, Highway 83, closed right now as well. So check out Manitoba 511 for conditions if you are planning to head out today. All the other highways in western Manitoba being reported with poor visibility, covered, so just bad conditions all around, even the ones that are not closed, including actually Highway 75 as well. Got a call from Chris who says if you're going south, once you get to St. Agath is when it starts to get really, really bad on Highway 75. Someone even texted Abby earlier to say that they were around Morris and they were driving, they had to turn around because it was just so bad. So heads up, Highway 75, not great either. Here in the city, just heads up on Gateway at McLeod, there's a multi-vehicle collision earlier that knocked down a light standard. The northbound curb lane is blocked right now, so keep left to get around that. If you see anything else going on, give me a call on the CBC Commuter line, that number 204-788-3093.
So how do we protect kids from the harms of the internet? As I mentioned, if you ask Australia, the answer is ban them from social media. That's what happened. Their government earlier this month announcing that legislation that would stop kids younger than 16 from using any social media. It would also hold platforms responsible for ensuring compliance. It is a popular plan down under. But what do Manitoban teens and tweens make of this? CBC's Chidi Akuma spoke to some Winnipeg middle schoolers to find out.
Hi, I'm Ruby. I'm Fiona. I'm Scarlett. I'm Maddie. I'm Maya. I'm Dylan.
Australia's thinking of banning social media. Do you guys think that's a good idea, or what do you think when you hear that?
It'd be terrible. It'd be really boring without it. There wouldn't be much to do.
I mean, I feel like there could be some good things about it, but then also that's how a lot of people communicate. I would just lose a lot of connections with my friends and not be able to talk to people as much, but then also I'd have more free time and not be stuck to a device all day.
I think social media is good because you can talk to people and stuff, but then I also think it's bad because you can talk to random people. I think maybe they could set up some things so if you're 12 years old you could set up some restriction things.
Are there negatives you find of social media?
I think cyberbullying is a big one. A lot of people get bullied over social media for just the most random things.
Yeah, I agree. Addiction and laziness. Sometimes it's really dangerous.
And what are the positives? You've already mentioned how it helps you connect with each other, but what else rocks about social media?
You can see fun videos and stuff, and it's just fun to scroll on TikTok or Instagram and just see the more fun side of it.
And sometimes you can learn things too. Yep, it's very educational.
I don't think they should ban it totally, but
if they ban it, they should open up some like kids' social media.
There's currently no plans of doing that here, but what would you think if they did decide to ban social media here in Manitoba?
We use social media a lot more like in Winnipeg, so I feel like maybe like I think we need it sort of here, but maybe not as much there, but I'm not really sure.
Chidi Akuma talking to some Winnipeg teens and tweens about Australia's social media ban. So as you know, Manitoba is in its first year of a province-wide cell phone ban for most kids. We want to explore whether or not social media banning might be part of our future steps. McGill University professor and social media expert Sarah Grimes says, no, not exactly. We're going to talk about that. She joins us via Zoom. Hi there.
Hi.
So tell me, what about the full social media ban for kids concerns you?
I mean, it's extremely sweeping. First of all, they haven't really described what social media will include. So ostensibly, it could include everything from Roblox and Minecraft to educational platforms that have social components to the types of platforms that the kids in the interview just now mentioned, Instagram and YouTube and TikTok. So it's extremely sweeping in terms of the vagueness and the language, as well as the age range that will be banned completely. The kids just now mentioned a number of positives as well as a number of negatives. And what a ban like this does is it completely effaces access to the positives while not really addressing the root of the negative impacts and risks that kids are confronting online.
What do you mean by that? Especially because I know you signed an open letter urging the Australian government to not go forward with this legislation. So obviously you care about this and have done research. So when you say, while not addressing the real roots of what will get ahead of this, what are those and what would you like to see there?
Yeah, I mean, just banning kids we can talk about whether the bans ever actually work, which in previous instances, it's really shown to be ineffective as a method. But just pretend that the ban was possible. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can still hear you very clearly.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Are you able to hear us?
Yeah, sorry, just a second.
No problem. No worries at all. We are on live on Zoom with Sarah Grimes, who's the Wolf Chair in Scientific and Technological Literacy and a professor in Communication Studies at McGill University, responding to the ban on social media in Australia and talking about why, in her view, this is something that she would not like to see come to Canada, a blanket ban. So we were elaborating on what you think would work in terms of what the roots of the real problems are.
Right. Yes. Sorry about that. And I can hear you clearly now. So, yes, the risks that kids are facing in online spaces are a lot of social risks as well as a lot of commercial risks. And a lot of it, would be extremely difficult to regulate, but not impossible. And there's a number of other models coming out in countries like the UK with the age-appropriate design code that really try to tackle the things that are happening in these spaces rather than just try to remove kids from the spaces. And the reason that that's more important, first of all, because at some point kids will be accessing these spaces and the content and the people. So it's not that, over 16, you're suddenly completely invulnerable to these types of risks like cyberbullying, commercial exploitation, scamming, and so on. But also it means that all of those elements can continue potentially within those spaces without having to be addressed by the social media platforms the companies who run these services. Yes, go ahead.
I'm interjecting just because it's such a big topic. I want to break it down for listeners really clearly, because when you're talking about, the social media websites and what would impact things, I want to move us to talking about the way that those websites are designed. What exactly is persuasive design?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great question. Yeah. Persuasive design is all the little mechanisms and some of the integrated mechanisms that are pretty deep that push us towards certain behavior. And the way that it's been defined as problematic is when it pushes us to behavior that's not in our best interests. So a really easy example are push notifications that are just trying to get you to engage with a particular app or a platform by telling you that someone has commented on your post, or telling you that if you come now, you'll get a particular reward, and there'll be some sort of benefit to you, or information that you feel you need.
And what can be harmful about that, especially through the lens of a child or a teenager using social media?
Yeah, so as young people are still learning self-regulation, anything that's sort of fostering compulsive checking and doing things outside of the time that you're trying to learn, to put aside time for your homework, put aside time for your friends. And if you have a fun seeming design feature that's trying to compel you to just keep doing the same thing over and over, it prolongs use. It can also send you down into spirals of negative feedback, but that are still just as seemingly important and urgent that you keep up with. So there's a number of different ways that these have been really found to be exploitative, and they're used very prevalently. And in some countries, they're banning those things as opposed to just removing kids from the spaces altogether.
Someone might be saying, obviously I mentioned you wrote this letter in support, urging on the Australian government not to go forward with this legislation. Someone might be wondering why you're interested from here in Canada and what your worry is about this potentially, or if you have a worry about this potentially creeping to Canada.
Yeah, first and foremost, children's rights are a global issue, and Australia, as a signatory state of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, also has a duty to, make sure that kids remain able to express themselves, have access to information, have access to opportunities to congregate and play together. But it's also one example, a very large and powerful example of a larger trend that we're seeing in different parts of the world, including some of the US states, where bans are being brought in instead of addressing some of the more nefarious and problematic aspects of online life. And it puts the onus on parents and kids to manage their own access, as opposed to asking big tech to do a better job of supporting kids' rights and making sure that they're safe in these spaces. And I think we could go either way. And I really hope that we go towards supporting children's rights. But these bans are easy Band-Aid solutions in a sense. They're not easy to implement in any way, but they can seem like a very dramatic and progressive step forward. And it can be appealing for certain governments to bring those in, as opposed to the problematic, messy, complicated task of actually addressing these issues.
Just as a last question, in Manitoba, as you well know, we already have a school cell phone ban in place. For some people might be thinking what Australia is doing might seem like a logical next step, especially if the cell phone ban is, determined and studied to be, once we look at it, to be effective and positive, have a positive impact on the kids. What would you say to that?
Well, there's a lot of differences in having like a space bracketed, for learning and for paying attention to the teacher and to the people around you, as well as the computers that they're using in classes, as opposed to a personal device. A personal device has a lot of personal fun, not school-related apps and functionalities to it that have potentially no place in school. I know that there are some teachers who find ways to integrate it, but it's limited in terms of the use that it can have versus the source of distraction. But that's very different from something that's this sweeping, because it's across all devices and it's across all contexts. So as I mentioned, depending on how they actually barrel down and define social media, it would also exclude a number of really important and valuable learning platforms that schools already rely on, as well as all of these incredibly important ways that kids learn and create and socialize outside of school. And it might seem like a next step in a sense, but it's actually a really dramatic step, and it's a huge expansion away from preserving a particular learning experience in your view. limited setting, and then kind of trying to reach into people's homes and weekends and their personal lives to a much greater extent.
Thank you very much for outlining your research and your point of view on this. Really appreciate you having us on CBC with us for the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
So much to talk about here. Sarah Grimes is the Wolf Chair in Scientific and Technological Literacy and a professor in communication studies at McGill University. So obviously, if you're thinking here and you're talking to your radio already about how you feel about social media bans, aka what Australia did for kids, we'd love to hear your views on this, your concerns about it, or whether or not you're in support of it or not, especially given what we talked about here this morning. 788-3205. Now, it's 8:28 and Corey's popped in, and that is because we actually got a call on that listener line. Now, this wasn't about this conversation we just had. This was about us earlier talking about World Children's Day, and we asked about people's happy places.
And for her, it would be your grandparents' house. So it's because of the story Trevor Need had about going to his old childhood's friend's home where there was their clubhouse. So here's a story that jotted her memory. Here, have a listen.
Oh, hi. My name is Miriam, and I wanted to share that probably back in 2008, I was driving with a friend who said casually, "Oh, I just need to go pick up something from work, and it's on Kilkenny." And I said, "Oh, I'll come with you because I want to show you where my grandparents' house, like where I used to, spend a lot of my time when I was a kid because my grandparents lived on Kilkenny." And she's like, "Okay, great." So we get in the car and start driving, and then she pulls up to my grandparents' house. I was like, "Is this a prank?" Anyway, so that was kind of a special connection. And my grandma was a teacher. I'm a teacher. And I actually work with kids with special needs. So kind of not really a full circle moment, but kind of a special connection there.
Love that full circle moment. So cute. I know. Yeah. Thanks for that call. And we got actually lots of calls in response to that. Maybe we'll fit them in some other time. But thanks to everyone who called in. In terms of traffic, Highway 1 closed from Austin to the Saskatchewan border. Lots of highways closed around Dauphin and Russell as well.
We're going to throw up a quick picture before the news. Deb Bosch sent this in. You can see the snow. Look at that. Footprints in the snow. This is up around the Turtle Mountain area of Manitoba. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's mostly cloudy, 1 degree right now, still above freezing, and that means we haven't seen snow in Winnipeg yet. We are expected to perhaps see some this afternoon, a high today in Winnipeg of 2. They are digging out, though, in western Manitoba.
Barberry is reporting around a change of 23 centimeters, so maybe a little bit more representative of how much snow folks have gotten.
Natalie Hazel at Environment and Climate Change Canada says it's hard to know exactly how much snow the Brandon area, for instance, has received because it's being blown around by strong wind. The snow, coupled with that wind, is creating treacherous driving conditions. Among the well-traveled highways shut down by this system is the Trans-Canada. It is closed from Austin all the way to Regina. Also closed are parts of highways 5, 10, 16, 45, and 83. All of that impacting schools today. 10 school divisions in western Manitoba have either canceled classes or buses, and so far 4 schools in the Franco-Manitoban School Division are also impacted. Healthcare workers say getting more hospital beds operational in Manitoba can't happen soon enough. As part of yesterday's throne speech, the government committed to 102 staffed healthcare beds. It doesn't say where those beds will be. Dr. Michelle Desalette is president-elect at Doctors Manitoba. She says the government needs to understand the urgency.
We heard some comments and allusions to increasing bed capacity in the hospitals. That's really encouraging, but we need to stop talking about it and we need to do it now.
Desolette says the shortage of staff for hospital beds is backing up emergency rooms across the province. The NDP says it has a new strategy to reduce ER wait times as well. Some students and staff at the University of Manitoba are feeling confused and frustrated after a security concern about a man armed with a knife on campus. Some question why it took the university so long to notify students and staff yesterday. Professor Eric Thompson is the U of M Faculty Association president. He says safety policies and procedures need to be reviewed again.
Taking the occasion to examine and make sure that the procedures are in place so that
next time this happens, it happens flawlessly. And, emergencies are always sad, but that it happens with the minimum disruption.
Thompson says the Faculty Association and University Administration will discuss security policies later this week. A report by the Special Parliamentary Committee on the Canada People's Republic of China relationship has made 12 recommendations, all focused on tightening security at Canadian research institutions and government departments. This report was prompted by a high-profile security breach at Canada's National Microbiology Lab here in Winnipeg. Karen Pauls has the latest.
The committee wants Canada to limit the transfer of highly dangerous viruses and pathogens like Ebola and Henipa to labs in trusted countries, not China. That's what happened, and part of the reason Jiango Chu and her husband Keating Chung were escorted out of Winnipeg's National Microbiology Lab in 2019. They were fired 2 years later. A security assessment found Chu intentionally shared scientific knowledge and materials with China. The committee also recommends Canada end all government-funded research in sensitive areas with China, and that it find ways to prevent people under investigation for national security breaches from leaving the country. Christian Leuprecht is an expert in security and defense.
The insider threat, having people there who understand what you're doing, what's of high value, is perhaps even a greater threat than sort of having your data exfiltrated, because these are people who've effectively betrayed your trust.
Chu and Chung have never been reached for comment. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Concern is growing in Winnipeg for the safety of people on the streets as temperatures are expected to drop in coming days. End Homelessness Winnipeg is ready with its 2024-25 winter weather response plan. Its partner organizations like Main Street Project are busy ramping up services to help people in need. Cindy Titus at Main Street Project says they have their 24/7 outreach vans on the streets until March.
Making sure that we're doing well-being checks on individuals, particularly those who are living in encampments and sleeping rough, making sure that they have the supplies that they need to stay warm, to stay safe, and to stay alive during these extreme weather situations.
Titus says other outreach groups offer services as part of the winter weather response plan. For example, Siloam Mission will offer a winter overnight warming space at its former drop-in center. And Sabe Peace Walkers will lead community care camps, providing people with shelter, food, and traditional medicines. You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout your day, as well as the latest on this weather system. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I'm tired.
I know.
I have no business saying that. I'm not out trudging through all this or driving white knuckle through any of it, but wow, right? So everybody hopefully just enjoy the day, accept the slowing down, and snuggle in. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells in our news department. Great work this morning, as always. So thanks to Heather Wells and to Joni Nicolo who are out there. With a last look at the traffic and weather situation, I guess we'll start with Corey.
Still, highway number 1 from Austin to the border with Saskatchewan closed right now, as well as highways around Dauphin, Roblin closed as well. So look to Manitoba 511 for more details if you're hitting the highway today. Pretty treacherous overall.
The summer is snow and blowing snow affecting most of the regions. We're going to see between 25 to 30 centimeters in some areas once the system blows through.
All right. Thanks, you guys. Big thanks to our team of associate producers, our producers in unit, Donna Carrero acting this week, as well as Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson, and our live team here. Yay! That's Corey Funk, and of course Abby Adiemi and Kevin Nipatebo behind the controls of YouTube. Take care, everyone. Thank you for being with us this morning. We'll talk to you again on Information Radio right here on CBC tomorrow.